Ladies and gents, boys and girls, welcome. Wednesday, July the 12th, 2023. Hope you're all doing well. Chris Phillips here, your host of the Daily Crow of the Spurs Up Show. We have got a jam-packed show for you today. Appreciate each and every single one of you tuning in. I see John Edwards, Xavier, Austin, Gregory, Brendan, Will Hall, Ethan, Chase Floyd. What is up? Bruin Nation, cheers, my friend. How are you? Appreciate you. Also, those in the Big Cock Club Discord, have the TDC Questions channel, the TDC Questions channel, to be sure your questions are answered there. Chase says, no hat. Uh-oh. Yeah, Chase, you might be working a little extra hard today. Either way, guys, GA, what's going on, man? Appreciate tuning in. We got a lot to get into here on this Wednesday as our South Carolina season preview series continues as we talk the Gamecocks defense heading into the 2023 football season. Again, guys, thank you all so much for being here. Thank you so much for tuning in. Jam-packed Wednesday, of course, in our third hour. We have our Q&A Power Hour. In hour number 2, JD PicKell of On3 jumps back on the show. JD, one of those who, of course, has been out of town the last couple of weeks with, last week being July 4th. And then the previous week, we did not do TDC. So we have not spoken to JD in quite some time. So a lot to get into, a lot to discuss, a lot to dissect, a lot to preview with SEC Media Days next week as well. And again, guys, like I just mentioned, we'll continue the South Carolina season preview series. We will begin talking about, though, the defense heading in the 2023 football season. We'll do that today, tomorrow, and then, of course, guys, on Friday, we will conclude things talking about the Gamecocks special teams, Beamer ball to the moon. Again, guys, thank you all so much for tuning in. Appreciate each and every single one of you. Really quickly, I want to remind you, tomorrow night, the official relaunch of tsus.store commences. I'm really excited to show you all what we have been working on in regards to the way that we are enhancing the customer experience truly, because that's what it's all about, right? That's what it's all about, is about you guys and the end consumer and making sure you're driving as much as much value as you possibly can. So I cannot wait to show you all, guys. We've been teasing it, of course, with the pictures of the outside tags and the inside labels and some of the things that will be included in your packaging and just the small details that I believe are going to make a big difference in regards to the customer experience and those who purchase merchandise from the Spurs Up Show. And I'll say this, I was confident, and I would be confident no matter what, that we would be poised to have yet another big football season on the merchandise front. But again, it's all about increasing the value for the end consumer. And so I'm like, what can we do? What can we do to go that extra mile to show people, hey, thank you. We're grateful for you. We want you to return and be a return customer and know that we care about you and appreciate you. And I know that the actions that we have taken, the new initiatives that we have implemented, they are certainly going to go a long way in showing you guys that. So again, really, really exciting stuff. Appreciate each and every single one of you tuning in. It's interesting. It says I have 0 people tuned in live right now, but I know that's not the case because I see you all commenting. So the Melon platform technology is great. I'm like, where is everybody? Pull the Shrek reference. Where is everybody? I don't know. Either way, again, guys, really excited for the relaunch of tsus.store. Also, I do want to go ahead and announce right here, have not made this announcement public on social media, but very excited to announce that we will once again, for the second consecutive season, be partnering up. Carolina Cigars will return as a business partner for the 2023 football season. We will begin running ads and advertising for Carolina Cigars beginning August 1st, basically. We'll start running the advertisements, the commercials here in the Daily Crow. Also, of course, guys, advertising on social media. Make sure you get all of your packs ahead of kickoff. But really excited. Love those guys over at Carolina Cigars. They do a great job. Obviously, love going down to Hilton Head, hanging out in the lounge, all that good stuff. Really, really excited to have them back on as a business partner. And you might recall, they weren't a business partner the entire season last season because they actually stumbled upon my work, or I think they had already seen the Spurs Up Show, but they did not know that I was such a big cigar guy. And the first video, believe it or not, guys, that they saw was the video after South Carolina beat Kentucky. And I was at my sister's wedding, and I'm outside of the reception or whatever with the stogie in mouth, doing the turn my swag on dance. And the next night, I'm smoking on the big blue pack, the Mark Stoops pack, the Kentucky pack, whatever. They said they saw that. They were like, all right, we got to partner up with this dude. We can do some big things. And so really excited to have Carolina Cigars back on as a business partner. Going to be a lot of fun. Going to be a lot of cool things happening this season. They're also, I think, even guys, of course, Carolina Cigars will have their own tailgate outside of Williams-Brice Stadium, and they will be carrying some of the TSUS merch on game days as well. Again, more details on that as we get closer to kickoff, as we sit just 52 days away. Guys, it's practically here, man. In about, 3 weeks? 3 weeks from now, South Carolina is going to be most likely on the practice field, give or take a couple of days. So SEC Media Days, obviously next week. Fall camp is just around the corner. Before you know it, kickoff will be here. So again, really excited, guys, to be chatting, conversating with you today. We got JD PicKell, like I mentioned, second hour, Q&A power hour in the third hour. And I also want to echo something that Austin Gregory said at the top of the show. We had a great time last night in the Big Cock Club Discord, talking all things Gamecocks, watching the SEC Network takeover for South Carolina, watching the replay of the South Carolina Clemson game. If you're not a member of the Big Cock Club, be sure to join today, patreon.com/Big Cock Club, or click the link in bio at our social media channels. You can see the Big Cock Club link there. You see today, I'm rocking the Big Cock Club polo, if you will. I hate this thing's right here in the way, but the Big Cock Club golf polo. Maybe I should rock this to SEC Media Days. No, I'm just kidding. I'm not going to do that. Listen, I can cut it on and be professional when I need to do so. We're going to do that all next week. Really looking forward to it. But the Big Cock Club golf polo, we got hats, we got hoodies, we got T-shirts, everything in between. You all know that. Also, of course, guys, you get to join the private Discord where we are going to be watching college football non-stop in the Discord this fall. Yes, I don't know if the BCC members know that, but we're going to be watching college football nonstop, especially all of South Carolina's games. So it's going to be a blast, going to be a ton of fun. Join today, patreon.com/Big Cock Club. Also, by the way, guys, with our store relaunch, you get 20% off all merchandise with an exclusive promo code when you join the Big Cock Club. So, I mean, if you like the merch, that alone is worth the $9.99 per month. I mean, it really is. That alone is worth the price of admission. Either way, and also Austin highlights, the simulations are beginning soon. So, yeah, that's going to be a ton of fun, man. The 23rd, we'll get going. The 23rd, we will get going with the simulations. It's going to be a blast. That's always a really, really good time. I saw my guy Bryce yesterday. He actually started his dynasty. He's doing a dynasty with Georgia Tech on NCAA football with college ball revamp. So it's a lot of fun, guys. Cannot wait for that. But in the meantime, hey, let's go ahead and dive into everything. We talked offense on Monday and Tuesday as our season preview series officially has gotten underway. We knocked out offense Monday and Tuesday. Today and tomorrow, we are talking Gamecocks defense heading into the 2023 football season. And let's get to know South Carolina's defense heading into year 3 of the Shane Beamer era and year 3 of Clayton White manning the defense in Columbia. First things first, let's look back at how the group fared in 2022, a season ago. 28.8 points per game, which was 10th in the SEC and tied 86th nationally. Admittedly, guys, that was a little bit higher than I was expecting. I mean, I knew what those numbers were, but when you take a look again, you're like, man, I remember the defense being a little bit better than that. But 28.8 points per game, 206.7 yards per game passing allowed. That was 5th in the SEC and 34th nationally. So as we've come to expect, the passing defense under Torian Gray, who, guys, I would vouch for what it's worth. I say he's the best defensive backs coach in all of college football when you look at the job he has done in Columbia. But 206.7 yards per game passing allowed, 5th in the conference. Hey, your top half in the conference, you're pretty darn good. And 34th nationally, we'll take that. But it was the rushing defense. And that is going to be a large topic of conversation over the next 2 days because it was the rushing defense yet again that was the black eye of this defense. 198 yards per game rushing allowed. Guys, that was 13th in the SEC and 116th nationally. Abysmal. And I'm taking nothing away from the passing defense. But one of the reasons that South Carolina has been so good at stopping the pass is simply they have not been able to stop the run. I mean, the late, great Brad Lowing, guys, told me firsthand, Chris, as a defensive coach, you should never brag about how good your pass defense is, because all you're telling teams is you can't stop the run. That's been the case for South Carolina over the first 2 years of the Shane Beamer era. 404.7 yards per game in total allowed last season, 10th in the SEC and 88th nationally. So, an okay defense. The statistics will tell you it was an okay defense, but really here, guys, is what the differentiator was, because many of you were saying, God, I don't remember the defense being that much of a deficiency a season ago. Turnovers made the difference. 23 of them. South Carolina was able to gain 15 interceptions, 8 fumble recoveries. That was tied second in the SEC and 20th nationally. So it was a defense last year, guys, that was able to maybe overcome some of its shortcomings by being opportunistic and getting the football off of people. And I know that's something they want to continue to do going into this fall as well. Let's look at our key departures, key returners, and new additions for the Gamecocks defense heading into the 2023 football season. And when you talk key departures, you got to start on the coaching side of things. Defensive line coach Jimmy Lindsey, no longer employed at the University of South Carolina. He is now in Baton Rouge coaching for the LSU Tigers. And guys, I will say this. I went on an LSU podcast. My guy, Blake Ruffino, AYS Sports. Shout out to those guys who do a fantastic job. Went on that podcast, and I was asked, Chris, what can you tell us about Jimmy Lindsey? I said, Blake, do you want my honest opinion? Or do you want me to tell you what you want to hear? Because the fact of the matter is this. I think most Gamecock fans look at the loss of Jimmy Lindsey, the loss, quote unquote, as addition by subtraction, because the run defense was abysmal in his 2 seasons. The defensive line, I could argue, underachieved vastly in his 2 seasons. And so it was one of those things where when I saw that Jimmy Lindsey was out, I said, hey, don't let the door hit you or the good Lord split you, as our friend Robbie Davis likes to say. And it's no ill will, no ill wishes, but the job just simply, guys, was not getting done up front. So Jimmy Lindsey, very well, with the talent they have at LSU, he may do very well there, but it just simply put did not work out in Columbia. And guys, had he returned, I think we'd all agree Jimmy Lindsey more than likely would have been the top assistant coach that I think would have had the most pressure coming into the season. But he is no longer here, guys. Also, looking on the field, your key departures, you lose defensive lineman Zach Pickens, defensive lineman Jordan Burch, the transfer portal, who's now at Oregon, defensive lineman Gilbert Edmond, who's now at Florida State, defensive lineman MJ Webb, linebacker Sherrod Green, who, guys, I was looking at the stats, severely underrated a season ago. I know his career was a mixed bag. I totally understand it, guys. There were plenty of plays where Sherrod Green, you looked and you just sort of squirm. You're like, oh my gosh, like look at that play. But you look at the numbers last year, I mean, you lose about 80 tackles at that linebacker spot. So Sherrod Green, as what was he, like a 6th-year player last year? He was a veteran in the middle of your defense. You do lose him from a season ago. You also lose linebacker Brad Johnson, who was a Muschamp hangover, of course, holdover, I should say. In the secondary, you lose Cam Smith, Darius Rush, Devontae Reed, and R.J. Roderick in that secondary. Of course, guys, the headliners are Cam Smith and Darius Rush, who were both NFL draft selections. So a lot to replace at the corners. But as you look at key returners, South Carolina, it feels, does have reinforcements to make up for what they lost from a season ago. You start up front. Defensive lineman Tonka Hemingway, he leads the way, and he'll be going to SEC Media Days next week to represent South Carolina. You then look at Alex Huntley in the middle, TJ Sanders, Nick Barrett. And again, guys, this is part of a group that, as I've mentioned before, Shane Beamer touted last year, the defensive tackles were the strength of the football team, in his opinion. So Do guys like Sanders, Barrett, do they come along, take that next step, and become the players they're hoping them to be? Also, you get edge Jordan Strawn back. Linebacker Mo Kaba. This is a pair of guys coming back from injury, and I know we love to talk about the stats from a season ago and how abysmal the Gamecocks were stopping the run. You got to give credit to the impact the injuries of Strawn and Kaba had in those first couple of weeks. The defense was not the same. Two of the best players on your defense, arguably the two best at that time. At the linebacker position, Stone Blanton and Debo Williams returned for you as well to help out Mo Kaba. Again, you were looking for Stone Blanton to take the next step. He was a bushy, what is the saying? Bright-eyed, bushy-tailed. I for some reason messed that up. Bright-eyed, bushy-tailed freshman a season ago. He was a greenhorn, if you will. Stone Blanton was at linebacker. You're looking for him, the former four-star prospect, to take the next step in the middle. And then Debo Williams, a guy that, listen, admittedly, I have not been all that high on Debo Williams. I will give him his credit. He played good football last year. You need him to continue to be solid for you in that rotation. You look at the secondary. Marcellus Dial returns. He's getting a lot of hype coming into this season. O'Donnell Fortune looks to be the other starting corner. He is back. David Spalding is back. Most likely your starter at the nickel. And, of course, at the safety positions, the Gamecocks feature two of the best in the SEC, Nick Emanwari and DQ Smith, and some would vouch that Emanwari is the best player, maybe not even just on this defense, but on this football team. So, the Gamecocks return a slew of experience, a lot of new faces as well, though, guys. Hey, you lose 6 of 8. Just in case you're wondering, we're talking about key departures. Gamecocks lose 6 of 8 in their front 7 when it comes to snap count, whatever that means to you. 6 of your top 8 in regards to snap count are gone from a season ago in the front 7. You look at your new additions for this football team on the defensive side. You start up front, defensive lineman Elijah Davis, a guy who flashed in the spring game, a big-body dude, could be sort of that wrecking ball you're looking for at the defensive tackle spot. You then go on the edge. Jatius Gear, the transfer portal player from Syracuse, which it was a really natural fit. Obviously, Gear being from Anderson, South Carolina, was great to see him come home, and a guy that had 3.5 sacks for the Orange a season ago. When you want to compare and contrast, and listen, I'm just pointing out the facts. Jordan Birch had 3.5 in his entire career. Jatius Gear had 3.5 last season. You then look also at edge Desmond Umeozulu, a guy they're really high on that I think is going to be an immediate guy in this rotation, one of those high-flying freshmen you signed in the 2023 class. Also another one, linebacker Grayson Pup Howard, a youngster that I think certainly is going to figure in and factor in the linebacker rotation early and often throughout this fall. And then finally, linebacker Jerron Willis, the Ole Miss transfer you picked up out of the portal, a former 4-star prospect and someone who should be able to, along with Pup Howard, give you a boost at the linebacker position. So again, guys, you lost a lot, you bring back a lot, you added a couple from the portal, and you've got some youngsters it looks like that can make a contribution on the defensive side. So all in all, what will it mean for Clayton White? And of course, guys, I should have mentioned in your key returners, of course, Clayton White returns for his 3rd consecutive season as defensive coordinator. And of course, guys, how does nobody call me out on this? The new additions. How about defensive line coach Travian Robertson? Excuse me, of course, the Gamecock great after spending time at Georgia State, Tulane, one of the up-and-coming stars when it comes to assistant coaches in college football. Travian Robertson comes home to lead that defensive front. Will South Carolina feel the immediate impact of his return to Columbia? Guys, we're going to jump into a quick break. On the other side, we will keep the conversation rolling here on this Wednesday. You're tuned in to the Daily Crow.
Muscle Dougie, ho. Muscle Dougie, ho.
All right, guys, we're back here on this Wednesday, July the 12th, 2023. Appreciate each and every single one of you tuning in. Let me say yet again, guys, it is truly a blessing to chat with each and every single one of you. I wake up loving what I do each and every single day and excited to do it and excited to chat with you all and something I look forward to. And I'll tell you all, I don't know if I really touched on this last week or whenever, but the week that we had off from TDC, that we did not do TDC, you know, of course, I was doing nothing but moving. And I tell you, by the end of that week, I was washed. But not having TDC, it's like, I can't even fathom it. I don't know how people don't do a live show. Like, it's so much fun. It's so entertaining. It's such a blast to catch up with you all each and every single day, man. Again, I can't say thank you enough. I also want to say this because I see Spur Daddy in the chat. And of course, guys, we will get into your comments, your questions, your calls also in the third hour. But it's so funny. Every time I feel like I get on my car and I turn on the radio and Mark Ryan is speaking, I hear the name Spur Daddy. Like, Spur Daddy, you are all over the chat, my guy. So I say this, hey, keep up the good work, because obviously you've got some valuable banter and insight if your name is getting called that much. And Spur Daddy, I appreciate you tuning in to TSUS as well. Again, guys, we're talking Gamecocks defense today, tomorrow, as our season preview series continues. That being said, let's continue the conversation as we talk top storylines for the Gamecocks defense heading in the 2023 football season. And guys, I mentioned it at the top of the show. Rushing defense. That is the name of the game for South Carolina. You guys get sick and tired of hearing me talk about the line of scrimmage and the deficiencies up front that South Carolina inevitably has, and where they need to make strides to take this program to the next level. And if you don't like what I have to say, fine. But the numbers do not lie. And one of the top storylines coming into this season is Travian Robertson addition at the defensive line coach spot, and him looking to revitalize that rushing defense heading into this year. South Carolina, guys, get this, has finished 11th or worse in the SEC 5 consecutive seasons in rushing defense. It is impossible, not improbable, impossible to win at a high level if you cannot stop the run any better than that. That's simply not going to get it done. I mean, when you look at last year, guys, the fact the Gamecocks were 13th in the SEC in rush defense, 198 yards per game, the fact that they fielded that type of rush defense and won 8 games is a minor miracle. And so we look now heading into this season. Was it a talent issue? Was it a coaching issue? Has it been a recruiting issue? Similar to the offensive line, Shane Beamer and company, they're addressing these needs. They're addressing these concerns in recruiting. I mean, you look at the guys they're bringing in, guys. You look at the guys they're signing. There are some fantastic line of scrimmage players. I mean, hell, South Carolina's in it right now for the best of the best in the 2024 cycle in Dylan Stewart. So the Gamecocks are taking the necessary steps to fix their woes up front. But in the short term, this season specifically, can Travian Robertson get that group going? Because it feels like, guys, a tale as old as time. We come into every single season. I hear it every summer. Oh, man, you see all those guys up front of the D-line, how talented they are, man. This D-line's going to go crazy, bro. Look at this 5-star and that 5-star and this star and star and star. And, you know, even Shane Beamer, I'm not coming at Coach Beamer, but even Coach Beamer saying last year, defensive tackles, their strength of the football team. How can you say that? And the defense finished 13th in the SEC in stopping the run. How does that happen? I know injuries happen. I understand it. But, I mean, you had a guy in like Zach Pickens last year. You had a guy like Jordan Burch last year. You had a pair of 5 stars up front. Sure didn't feel like it. Was it a talent issue? Was it a misevaluation issue? Was it a coaching issue? Travian Robertson, one of the greatest of all time in Gamecocks football history. He knows a thing or two about stopping the run. And he will try to begin to solve that for South Carolina this season. 11th or worse, 5 straight years stopping the run in Columbia. It cannot happen, and the Gamecocks expect to win at a high level. Another big storyline, guys, the Gamecocks defense heading in this season. The return of edge Jordan Strawn and linebacker Mo Kaba from injury. And guys, these are significant returns from injury. Now, the first question is this. Are they going to be at 110%? Are they going to be themselves again? Because anytime you have these ACLs, whatever, guys, I mean, you certainly hope, and we've seen guys come back from it, but you just never know, right? It's a really tricky thing. And if they are, even if they're just 90% of what they were, right? Obviously 100% to play, but if they're a half a step slow, that's still pretty damn good. Jordan Strawn was a guy who led the entire country in sacks in 2020. He flashed in 2021, and I expected him to be the Gamecocks' leading sacker a season ago. I really thought Jordan Strawn was primed for that breakout year, and I think he would have had it had he not gotten injured early in the season. Mo Kaba, same thing. A guy that, of course, we all know J.C. Sherbert and those guys. They love Mo Kaba. They sponsor Mo Kaba. A dude who had tons of hype and, hoopla around him going into last year, and for good reason, right? He was a highly touted recruit, a guy who had played solid football, but was going to be the feature guy last year, and he gets hurt in the Arkansas game. We talk about the numbers for the defense a season ago, but you can't talk about that and not say that those numbers were maybe a bit skewed because those two guys were not available. They were not healthy. They were injured early on. So the return of Strawn, the return of Kaba, just how much does it help this defense? Because we're talking about the front seven. We're talking about stopping the run. These are two guys who can certainly help you in that department. Guys, we're talking about Mo Kaba, sticking with the linebacker position. Where do the answers come at linebacker? I don't know what it is about linebacker, by the way, guys. We talk about, this school's tight end U, wide receiver U, we're DBU. One thing South Carolina isn't is linebacker U. I don't know what it is, but it has been so long, it feels like, since the Gamecocks featured a complete linebacking core. Like, can you recall? I'm genuinely asking, when is the last time South Carolina went into a season and you felt like, oh, yep, linebacker's a strength of this defense? I mean, dude, it has been forever. Now, South Carolina's had some good ones, right? They've had the TJ Brunsons. They've had the Ernest Jones. They've had, even the Sky Moores, if you will. But I think it's really been since, Jasper Brinkley, Shaq Wilson, Eric Norwood. Like, it's literally been, I think, over a decade since I looked at the linebacker position and said, man, the Gamecocks have got some really good linebackers. They got some of the best linebackers in the SEC. It has been a long time. Where do the answers come at that position? And again, I think you see Shane Beamer and company, they understand that's got to be answered. That's got to be addressed the way they're recruiting. But you got guys like Stone Blanton, Pup Howard, who's a true freshman, Debo Williams, Jerron Willis, the Ole Miss transfer, a guy like Donovan Westmoreland. I mean, who is it? I mean, you expect good things out of Mo Kaba. I think you know what you're getting out of Debo Williams. And in this 4-2-5, you only have 2 linebackers on the field. But, who are those other guys? Because part of stopping the run, we put all of it on the front 4, the defensive front. But the linebacker position is just as much to blame. And it simply, guys, has not been very good. South Carolina is changing this position in recruiting. But in the meantime, who steps up? Because you think to yourself, they are upgrading the linebacker spot. They are. They're upgrading it through recruiting, through some of the guys they've signed. I mean, obviously, a guy like Pup Howard, who we expect to be an impact dude immediately. But I think, too, as you saw last year with Stone Blanton, that's a guy with extreme talent. It is. But when you're asking true freshmen to play in the SEC, there's going to be growing pains, guys. It's just going to happen. So, where do the answers come? Because I think to improve on last year's numbers, to improve on that rush defense, and to improve as a whole as a defense, someone's going to have to step up at the linebacker spot. Looking at the secondary guys, another big storyline. Marcellus Dial and O'Donnell Fortune are replacing a pair of NFL draft picks. I like both these guys, Dial and Fortune. I do. Unfortunately, there are two images in my head of O'Donnell Fortune. One of them is positive and one of them is negative. The positive is the interception return for a touchdown in the bowl game against Notre Dame. That was a great play, incredible. I was in the building. The electricity was out of this world. The negative memory of O'Donnell Fortune is him getting absolutely mossed by Brock Bowers. And granted, it's Brock Bowers. I get it, but I was like, man, woo. Anyways, Marcellus Dial, a guy that I think was he your leading interception guy a season ago, I believe? If not, he was right there at the top. Finished off the season really strong, had a pick in that game against Clemson. Played some really good football for you down the stretch. But he goes from playing just kind of as a roll guy, nickel guy, whatever, to now you're the dude on the outside. And anytime, guys, listen, anytime you're replacing a pair of NFL guys like Cam Smith and Darius Rush, it simply would not be fair to say, oh, there's no big deal. We're just going to plug and play, and there's going to be no drop-off. Like, I don't think you're giving enough credit to how good those guys were. How severe is the drop-off? I think we all just trust under Torrey and Gray that the pass defense will be fine. But when you look at early in the season, guys, especially, and some of these pass-happy offenses that you're playing, it's a storyline, and it's going to be something to follow. How do Marcellus Dial and O'Donnell Fortune, how do they fare? David Spalding at the nickel, most likely. Also, depth at the cornerback position is a storyline and a bit of a concern. You don't have immense depth there, guys. You don't have the greatest depth in the world at the cornerback position. So, anytime you're replacing two NFL corners, it's a big-time storyline. Marcellus Dial and O'Donnell Fortune will look to do just that this season. Sticking with the secondary guys and the big storyline, the back end of the defense. It will be a strength yet again with Nick Emanwore, DQ Smith. Just how good are those guys in this season? Nick Emanwore certainly was the biggest surprise of 2022 on the defensive side and what he did, obviously earning freshman All-American honors. Of course, DQ Smith, a freshman All-American, I believe, as well. Freshman All-SEC at minimum. Either way, both players were fantastic in their first years on campus. Also, I guess it brings up this point as well. If Emanwore and DQ Smith were those guys a season ago, who will be those guys this season? More on that in just a second. But the back end of the defense, anytime you have guys like that, a guy like Nick Emanwore, who obviously, again, is great against the pass, but a dude who embraces contact, will help in the rushing game. DQ Smith, obviously, what he did end of last season as well, and throughout the season, guys both who have a knack for the football. You believe, even maybe some of the questions at corner, that the secondary is going to be a strength yet again, right? With those two guys manning the back end. Another big storyline, guys, going in this season, the necessity, I believe, of emergence from newcomers. I'm looking at guys like Elijah Davis, Jatius Gear, Desmond Umeozulu, Jerron Willis, a mix of these freshman newcomers as well as transfer portal guys. I think there is absolutely a necessity for these guys to step up and not just fill a jersey, not just be a depth guy, but for some of these guys to be impact players. I mean, one thing I didn't really talk about in this is the edge position and generating pressure on the quarterback. You get Jordan Strawn back. Is he going to be his normal self? At the other edge spot, man, you were hurting before you got Jatius Gear. You were really hurting. I mean, depth is still a major concern at that position. A guy like Elijah Davis, who was the number one rated defensive tackle coming out of JUCO. What type of impact does he have in the middle? Jatius Gear coming from Syracuse was good for the Orange. Now he transitions to SEC football. You need a guy like Jerron Willis to step up. Pup Howard to step up at linebacker. So You've got some nice pieces that are coming back. You do lose a lot defensively. Let's call it for what it is. You lose a lot on the defensive side. And you got some nice pieces returning, and you absolutely need these newcomers, some of these newcomers to step up and step into some big-time roles for your defense. Guys, my final top storyline for the Gamecocks defense heading into the 2023 football season, and it's one, I think it's a question we have been asking for a couple of years now, at minimum since the beginning of the Shane Beamer era. What does South Carolina need to do to become a more well-rounded defense? Because that is the next step for this group. The secondary has shown they've overachieved, I would say, in the first 2 years under Torian Gray. We've gotten to a point where we're just saying, hey, the secondary is going to be fine. Torian Gray, plug and play. They're going to figure it out, right? He is earning and has earned, I should say, the benefit of the doubt. Hey, you lose Cam Smith, Darius Rush, no big deal. Torian Gray will have us ready to go. But this Gamecocks defense, guys, it feels very simple to beat them. Hey, you can run the football on these guys. Guys, South Carolina was 13th in the conference, not just in total rushing defense, but yards per carry. I mean, nothing about the rush defense was good. And it was turnovers that really kept you in it, kept you in the fight all season. If you did not get those turnovers, the clip at which you did, 23 of them to be exact, guys, South Carolina averaged 1.8 turnovers per game. That was tied for first in the SEC. Generated 1.8 turnovers per game, tied for first in the conference. I've mentioned this many times, but one of my greatest concerns is this. What if South Carolina is not getting the turnovers at that clip? What if they're sixth in the SEC this year? What if they're seventh? What if they're just middle of the pack? What if instead of generating 23 turnovers, they generate 17? Is this defense good enough, and will they be well-rounded enough to hold up even if the turnovers aren't there? Because even with generating those turnovers, you're giving up 28 points per game, almost 29 points per game. So, is South Carolina able to make strides in the rushing defense? Because here's the thing, guys. I'd rather South Carolina finish 7th or 8th in pass defense, but also finish in the top half in rush defense. At that point, you're a well-balanced defense. At that point, you have a chance. Teams aren't able to just run the ball down your throat, which is the most helpless feeling that a defense can have and a college football team can have in general when you're sitting there on the sideline or you're sitting there as a fan in the stands just watching the other opponent or watching the opponent run it down your throat. You know, I didn't have this listed as one of my top storylines, but I'll say this, guys, and I'm going to add this, and I'm not trying to be the, oh, let's talk about the coach guy, but how much pressure's on Clayton White this year? I think that, you know, J.C. Sherbert already mentioned this a couple of weeks ago when we were having some fun talking about, hey, which assistant coach, position coach specifically, has the most pressure on them this season, and J.C. Sherbert took it to Clayton White. And, guys, I'll say this. And I like Clayton White a lot. I am not saying, hey, we need to, you know, Clayton White's on the hot seat. I'm not saying that at all. I like Clayton White. I think he's done a good job with the defense. But Clayton White's favorite person over the last 2 years has undoubtedly been Marcus Satterfield. Because Marcus Satterfield, the offense was so bad in the first 2 years of the Shane Beamer era, it took all the attention away from the defense. It took all the attention away from what Clayton White and them were doing. So if the defense has a similar year to even last year, guys, I'm not going to be surprised in the slightest if there becomes some restlessness from this fan base, because we need to see the Gamecocks start making some positive strides on the defensive side. 5 straight seasons of 11th or worse in stopping the run. Like, that's got to stop. That's got to be put to an end. And so I think there's real, I'm not saying hot seat, he's going to get fired pressure, but I think there's real competitive pressure on Clayton White this year to get that defense going. Because it's been good enough. But the offense has been so bad, they've been the talking point. And especially if you have the type of season this year that I think most are hoping for the offensive side, if the defense isn't up to par and they're a reason you're losing games, all of a sudden, I think the pressure gets turned onto Clayton White. Guys, that being said, let's go ahead and jump into another quick break here on this Wednesday, July the 12th, 2023. We will keep the conversation going on the other side. You're tuned in to the Daily Crow.
Muscle Dougie, ho. Muscle Dougie Ho.
All right, guys, welcome back. Welcome back. I just fumbled over my words there. I said, welcome back Wednesday, July the 12th, 2023. My goodness, could not spit that out for some reason. Again, appreciate each and every single one of you tuning in either way. Thank you all so much for the continued love and support. Really been excited, guys. Just got an email from the SEC Media Days Communications, if you will, Chuck Dunlap sending this over. The SEC Network to feature a record 47 hours of studio programming for 2023 SEC Kickoff, presented by Regions, live from Nashville, July 17th through 20th. They'll have SEC This Morning, SEC Now, the Paul Feinbaum Show, and SEC Nation will take place. There'll be a free concert Tuesday, July the 18th on Lower Broadway. 6 o'clock. SEC Nation will go live at 7 on ESPN2. And the concert will begin at 8. So, going to be a ton of fun, guys. Looking forward to it. Yours truly, of course, going to be in Nashville. It's going to be one hell of a week in the Music City. And I can't wait. I've never been to Nashville at all for any reason. So, looking forward to hanging out in Nashville, Tennessee, and covering the event. And it's going to be a blast, man. I absolutely cannot wait. Guys, again, we're talking Gamecocks defense heading into the 2023 football season. We've mentioned returners, departures, storylines. Let's talk my 5 reasons why I feel the Gamecocks defense could be better this upcoming season. Year 3 of the Clayton White era in Columbia, South Carolina on the defensive side of the football. We'll start with number 1, the return of Mo Kaba and Jordan Strawn from injury. Guys, simply put, it was a massive blow to lose these 2 players to injury a season ago. When you think about the impact up front in the front 7, Jordan Strawn, as we talked about earlier, arguably your top pass rusher on your defense, and also a guy who could certainly hold his own in stopping the run. And then Mo Kaba, man, one of your leaders on the interior, the inside there at the linebacker spot. And Mo Kaba, someone that's expected to be a linebacker on this year's defense as well. I think the return of both those guys, assuming they're both going to be back to 110% back to their normal selves, the return of Mo Kaba, Jordan Strawn from those injuries a season ago, I think it could be a huge boost for this defense, and I think it could provide much improved results, especially in stopping the run in this 2023 football season. My second reason the Gamecocks defense could be better. JUCO transfer defensive tackle Elijah Davis becomes a wrecking ball for the Gamecocks in the middle. You look at what South Carolina has returning up front. You feel good about Alex Huntley. Of course, Tonka Hemingway. Don't need to say much about him. A force on that South Carolina defensive front. You then look at guys like Nick Barrett, TJ Sanders. Elijah Davis, though, provides, when they talk about great defensive linemen and defensive tackles, what do they have, guys? They have girth. They have girth. He provides that girth in the middle that South Carolina, I think, has been missing over the last couple of years. Flash in the spring game. And you can't really you can't draw conclusions from a spring game. But Elijah Davis was a guy, I think when you look at the combination of size, athleticism, I think that's something you really like. And again, this is a guy, was the number 1 rated junior college defensive tackle in last year's class. I think Elijah Davis could make a major impact. I would not be surprised if he is starting at some point. And I think his emergence up front in the middle could be a huge reason, literally and figuratively, that South Carolina improves on the defensive side of the football, and especially in slowing down the run. My third reason why South Carolina's defense could be better this season, the linebacker group takes a major step forward. And this is one, guys, I think when you look at the additions, the way they're recruiting, I'd be surprised if this one does not come to fruition. Yes, you lose Sherrod Green. And like I mentioned, guys, at the top of the show, I think that's a loss that maybe we're not talking about enough. When you look at what he did for you last year, when you look at the statistics, almost 80 tackles that South Carolina is going to have to replace. And, experience, it's invaluable. Sometimes it's overrated, but it can be invaluable as well. And Sherrod Green was a guy who had played a ton of football. But when you look at the linebacker position, when you return a guy like Mo Kaba from injury, that's huge. When you return a guy like Debo Williams, who at this point has played a ton of football for you, you bring back a guy like Stone Blanton, who I think flashed as a true freshman and played much better down the stretch. You're looking for him to make that breakout or have that breakout season, if you will. You look at a guy like Donovan Westmoreland, someone that hasn't really done a whole lot to this point, but could help. Bam Martin Scott, a guy who's been a role player, but could help out. And then you have somebody like Jerron Willis, the Ole Miss transfer, that former four-star prospect. I know they don't play a lot of defense at Ole Miss, but you look at his recruiting profile, there's some promising signs there. And then, of course, guys, last but certainly not least, Grayson Pup Howard, who was so eager to get on campus, he joined in the bowl practices. So he's a guy at this point who has been with this Gamecocks football team for quite a while now and somebody who flew around in that spring game. So, all in all, if the linebacker position can take some major steps forward, I think you're going to see this defense take a jump, and I think you're going to see this defense improve stopping the run. My fourth reason why I believe the South Carolina defense could be better in 2023, the secondary continues to shine under Torian Gray. Hey, they don't need to change hardly anything they're doing. Just keep up the good work. Because that unit under Torian Gray has been fantastic. When you look at the numbers and you look at the players, they're churning out the NFL draft picks. I mean, you think about the job Torian Gray has done in 2 seasons. Taken over for a secondary that in 2020 with NFL players on it, like J.C. Horn and Israel Mukuamu, was abysmal, guys. One of the worst in the SEC. One of the worst in college football. Since then, the Gamecocks finished, I think, number 1 in pass defense in 2021 and 5th in the conference in pass defense a season ago. Yes, you have some questions on the outside with Marcellus Dial and O'Donnell Fortune, but if those guys who played good football last year, by the way, if they're able to continue to progress and come into their own, I think South Carolina and Nick Imawari being a year older, DQ Smith is a year older. Also, you do have some talented young guys. I know I talked about depth and lack thereof earlier in the show, but you've got some guys, you look at their recruiting profiles, and I mean, a guy like Keenan Nelson Jr., he's been fantastic. He was fantastic, a fantastic pickup on the recruiting trails, what I'm trying to say. He was a fantastic signing. Where's he been? Played a little bit in the bowl game, but outside of that, we have not seen him. Can a guy like that take a step forward? David Spalding, B.J. Gibson, can they take steps forward as well? And you just trust under Torian Gray that the secondary will be a strength. So if they are yet again, I think that's another big reason why the Gamecocks defense, it could assist in them being even better than they were a season ago. My fifth and final reason, guys, why I believe the Gamecocks defense could be better in 2023, the turnovers continue to come in bunches. 23 last season, 15 interceptions with 8 fumble recoveries. Guys, at some point, you can't say, well, a lot of turnovers is luck and right place, right time, and when's that going to run out? At some point, you just have to tip your cap and say, hey, this defense, they're opportunistic. That's their brand of football. They may not be the most dominant. They might not be the best defense in college football, but they're opportunistic, man. They make plays. They put themselves in position to make those kinds of plays. And so if South Carolina is able to get to that 23 mark again, God forbid, maybe even more, it's certainly going to assist in South Carolina taking yet another big step forward on the defensive side of the football. If the turnovers can come in bunches, watch out for Clayton White's unit this season. Guys, I'm going to add, by the way, a bonus reason because I did not mention this, and I feel like I should. My bonus reason why I feel South Carolina's defense could be better this season, the Travian Robertson effect and his insertion into the Gamecocks coaching staff and him taking over the Gamecocks defensive line. Maybe just changing the voice in that room is going to change the results. Because, again, guys, it's sort of a maddening thing. I mean, I'm not sitting here saying South Carolina's recruiting like Georgia up front, but there have been some talented players on that defensive line. And it's felt like, for whatever reason, over the last couple of years, this defensive line just never lives up to the hype. And the numbers reflect that, by the way. You've been piss poor against the run the last two seasons, 198 yards per game, 13th in the SEC, 116th nationally a season ago. Does the addition of an all-time Gamecock great in Travian Robertson, a guy who's been at South Carolina, he's done it before, and he's been part of defenses that stop the run at a high level. He knows what it's supposed to look like, and he was coached by one of the greatest of all time, the late, great Brad Lawley. He knows how it's supposed to be played. He knows how it's supposed to be coached. And he knows what it's supposed to look like. The addition of Travian Robertson is something that could lead to a major change of results for the South Carolina defensive front and, in turn, the South Carolina defense in the 2023 football season. Guys, let's jump into another break. On the other side, we're going to get JD PicKell of On 3 on the show. Really excited to chat with our good friend, JD. Guys, all that and more on the other side of this break. You're tuned in to the Daily Crow.
Muscle Dougie, ho. Macho Dougie, ho.
All right, guys, we're back here on this Wednesday, July the 12th, 2023. Appreciate each and every single one of you tuning in, guys. Like I mentioned, really excited. Just over 24 hours from now, tsus.store and our relaunch will officially take place. Looking forward to it. Going to be awesome. Excited. Guys, just even the layout of the store, the way the mock-ups are presented, the way the products are now presented, guys. You might recall, earlier, or even just, I guess, right now, because the store is still live, you would have to go, when you went to tsus.store, for example, Beamer Ball t-shirts, we'll just say. You'd have 3 separate products. Beamer Ball t-shirt black, Beamer Ball t-shirt garnet, Beamer Ball t-shirt white. Now, the Beamer Ball t-shirt will be one product. And when you go to that product, you'll be able to select whatever color and whatever size you prefer. So there will be no more of, it'll make things much, much easier, much more concise. And when you go to the store, it's going to look like there's a lot less products, which admittedly we have focused on our best sellers, but also we've been able to condense things and just make it much easier for the end consumer. So looking forward to that, guys. Really exciting. And that's tomorrow night, 7 o'clock. 7 o'clock is when the new store will drop. Guys, really excited. We got JD PicKell upcoming at 1:15. In the meantime, I got tagged in this. This is so funny. Apparently, message board geniuses posted this, which it's so funny. They have a podcast with 377 whole followers. They've talked crap on me before, which is totally fine, whatever. But message board geniuses posted a screenshot from Scoop Duck, an Oregon site, that some guy started a thread and said, "Hey, all, I'm looking for any and all recommendations of accounts with the absolute worst college football takes on Twitter. I'm not looking for actual writers and journalists who we all may make fun of, but rather wild homer type accounts like Arrogant Nation or Jordan Reffitt, whoever that is. I am making a Twitter list to follow said accounts on Saturdays in the fall for pure amusement. Thanks in advance for the recommendations." And of course, I got tagged by somebody in the CSC. What do y'all think? Who are the worst Twitter accounts? Which, it's so funny though, guys. See, here's the thing. We say the worst Twitter accounts. But the number one goal on social media is to be purely entertaining. That's it. So, are they a bad Twitter account if they're keeping you engaged, entertained? I mean, I don't know. Lynn Turner, yes, women's cut shirts, Lynn, I can assure you, I can guarantee you, are coming. Let me ask you this, Lynn. This is a serious question. Lynn, let me ask you this. When it comes to a women's cut shirt, do you want the same Beamer Ball logo, for example, right here? Do you want that on the shirt? Or would you like a custom Beamer Ball logo that, say, looks different? Do you want the same thing? What exactly would you like? I'm curious. But we can definitely do, Lynn, with my new vendor, we can most certainly do. And I'm assuming, Lynn, you're not asking for a crop top, correct? Or are you? Because we could also do that. My new vendor, they actually, with their business, they fulfill orders for women's merchandise. So they know what they're doing. So, Lynn, we will finally be able to get you that women's cut shirt. I promise you. John Edward, yes, I did see Will McGillis signed with the Angels. I did see that. I did indeed see that. Mm-mm-mm. Anyways, guys, we're going to get into all your questions, your comments, everything in the third hour. GA says, are you still doing comfort colors? GA, everything that we do will be comfort colors. Yes, absolutely 110%. Mm-hmm. It'll all be comfort colors. Here's the thing, though, GA. And again, this is one of the enhancements. I might post a picture about this today, even. This is one of the enhancements, though, is that normally when you get a t-shirt from us, it had the comfort colors tag on it, right? It would say comfort colors. Now, the shirts are still going to be comfort colors, but those tags are going to be removed. And you're going to have the iron-on TSUS tag in the shirt. So instead of it looking like a comfort colors shirt that has our stuff printed on it, this is now a TSUS shirt, period. So, again, that's one of those small details that I think is going to make a big difference and go a long way in the quality of the merchandise, right? Like, you're going to know, like, when you put that shirt on, I'm rocking a TSUS shirt, 110%. Everything from the inside tag to the logo to the outside tag to the packaging. You get a free sticker with every purchase. You get a thank you card, a mailer, if you will, with every purchase. So there's a lot of cool stuff, man. I'm telling you, there's a ton of cool stuff. And GA, you've already seen the picture I posted in the merchandise tab, but I'm going to post that on social media and just sort of let people know what is going on and everything that's going to be included. I am so excited about it, man. I'm so pumped. So pumped. So, again, guys, next couple of minutes, we got my good friend JD PicKell of On 3 jumping on the show. And again, we have not spoken to JD in quite some time. Been quite a while since we've spoken to JD PicKell. So looking forward to getting his thoughts. And guys, if you ever, by the way, if you ever have questions for guests, our guests that jump on, you want to leave them in the comments, you're more than welcome to do so. You can leave your comments in there, and we'll be more than happy to take some of the best and ask, because I do draw inspiration from you guys. And so I'd love to hear from you. I'd love to hear from you. Anyways, guys, let's see. So we talked Gamecocks defense today. We'll keep that convo going tomorrow. As you can tell, guys, it is a very similar format to what we did with offense. It'll basically be the same things. We'll hit on 5 reasons why they'll be worse, how to define success, and predictions for the defense. That'll all be tomorrow. And then on Friday's show, I am going to cram special teams all into one show. So that will be that. And then, guys, getting into next week, we'll be at SEC Media Days, and we will begin our 2023 opponent preview series, where I will have someone from the opposing side join me to break down this Gamecock schedule and give you guys sort of an idea of how the opposing side is feeling about the matchup this season. So going to be a ton of fun, guys. Really looking forward to it. Really, really excited for what's to come. Anyways, we await JD PicKell. Like I mentioned, guys, was a business partner for this football season. Been chatting with those guys all morning. And we got some exciting things in the pipeline with the store relaunch and everything as we get closer to football season. Obviously, SEC Media Days next week. Exciting times right now. And, of course, let's get to it. He joins us every single Wednesday. Excited to have him on the show. Someone I'm blessed and grateful to call not just a guest on this show, but a friend of mine. JD PicKell of On 3, one of the best in the business, joins us. JD, what's up, my man? How you feeling?
How we doing, my guy?
Dude, I'm doing fantastic. Things look a little bit different since you and I last spoke. We're in the new crib, new setup. So I hope I didn't throw you off too badly. But great to see your face, man. It's been quite a while. How was your July 4th vacationing? Took some time off. Now I know you're ready for the grind of college football, man. How was it?
Yeah, man, it was good. Got out to Michigan, saw the wife's family. Got out to Oregon, saw my family for the 4th. And so all the batters are charged, man. It's going to be good. We got SEC Media Day here in few short days, man. It's good though, man. It feels like it's like finally here. You know what I mean? Like Thanksgiving is to Christmas what SEC Media Day is to college football season. So I think we're finally at that point.
JD, probably the perfect way to phrase. I'd never thought of that. SEC Media Days is the Thanksgiving to Christmas, which is the football. That's just poetic, my friend. Print that on a T-shirt, my guy.
I appreciate
That's
that.
incredible. Let me ask you this: are you a guy that this is how I'm wired? So, my girlfriend's family's in Ohio, and the way that I'm wired is I look at the route that we're traveling. We drove that, but I look at where we're going and I say, okay, what college football stadium is around this area that I have not seen yet? So I don't know if you saw these pictures I posted like a month or so ago, but we actually stopped by the Cincinnati football stadium because I'd never seen it before. And I'm a stadium guy. I love stadiums, man. I just love stadiums. Am I crazy, or is that something you partake in also?
No, this is I feel so known right now, Chris, by you saying that. One, that's phenomenal. I need to see those pictures. Second, quick story for you. I would drive from New York to Atlanta on my way home from school. So whenever I was driving home, I go through Virginia, and the exact same thought came through my mind. And I'm like, okay, well, how far am I from like Blacksburg? Blacksburg's right along the route. And so multiple times throughout my stop, that was one of the first Chick-fil-A's that I had on my route available to me from New York, getting to Atlanta at that point in time, and made my fair share of stops in Blacksburg to go check out the stadium. And no, that's phenomenal, man. Yeah, it's just little things, it's little things that we do as college football fans that if you don't get it, you just don't get it. It's one of those things.
Yeah, it's something that I feel like, JD, I've recently found out about myself too. Is like I knew I liked stadiums, but starting to travel a little bit more, I'm like, I really like it's just cool to see the different venues of college ball. Like Cincinnati's, for example, like it is the most like when you think of a stadium in a city, but it's unique in that way. It's unique in that. And it was very cool to go to Cincy's campus and see all the Big 12 stuff hanging around. Obviously, they're excited for that. Anyways, JD PicKell on 3. Appreciate you taking the time, my friend. Again, it's been weeks since we last spoke, so a lot to get into. I'll start with this, JD. Obviously, I'm not asking you to lock in any picks, anything like that. Of course, you will be at SEC Media Days. You will be one of those locking in your picks for East, West, champion, all SEC, what have you. But in the meantime, I have locked in my picks for South Carolina's 2023 football season. I got 7-5, 4-4 in SEC play. You hear that record. Your thoughts on that? Am I on kind of where you'd expect? Am I a little bit off my rocker? Am I too pessimistic, optimistic? Like your overall thoughts. I think the one that I had that most shook up Gamecock fans, and this was something, JD, I didn't expect, right? You sit down to make predictions because it's, you know this, right? It's one thing to say, okay, these two teams play in a one-off game, who's going to win? But when you look at a schedule and the way it shakes out, when are bye weeks, like when do you play this team, then this game follows this one up, that to me truly impacts which games you could potentially win and lose. So I picked the Gamecocks to lose to Mississippi State. That was one that has been that I didn't even expect to pick. That, you know, I caught some grief for sure, but I've got Carolina doing what they've sort of done under Beamer, second half, catching fire, taking down a Mizzou, taking down a Kentucky, getting to 7 wins. Your thoughts on that 7-5 record prediction? Again, I feel like that feels right for this team this year. What say you?
I think that's incredibly fair. I mean, to your point, first they would be covering whatever Vegas says they're going to have in the preseason, being right around 6.5 wins. I think it's incredibly fair. And what you said about predicting schedules is so fascinating because we sit down, we talk about South Carolina, and it's like they have all the makings in a vacuum, roster-wise and quarterback-wise and skill position-wise, of like an 8-win football team. Maybe they're sneaky, get to 9. Look at the schedule and how it shakes out, and you're like, man, I don't know if I see them beating X, Y, and Z team. I mean, I think the sneaky one for me is Florida. That run game has to get better defensively for South Carolina if they're going to be able to beat a team like Florida. And Florida preseason is like 5.5 win total in Vegas. So I think what you said is on the money with right around the spot that they could be in. And I think the one thing that you've done a good job getting out ahead of is just because South Carolina in this upcoming season, whatever they do record-wise, it shouldn't shake their feeling about Shane Beamer, the direction of the operation. Like, the season is the season, but for South Carolina and with Shane Beamer, they need to be in it for the long haul, in my humble opinion. I think this is probably your opinion as well when it comes to him. So that 7-5 record, I think, is right around where I would anticipate having them. I think we'll do our schedule prediction for them here in the coming week or two. But that's probably where I think I'll lean right now when it comes to South Carolina.
Yeah, and admittedly, you know, I'm dropping my game-by-game predictions, JD, for every single SEC team. And, you know, I mean, I always feel good about my picks, right? I mean, I like to go into the season feeling good about them. But I really tried to find a balance of, you know, going off what you know, but you have to pick a level of chaos because
Yeah.
outside of Georgia, we'll say Georgia, Bama, LSU, and even those two teams, even Bama and LSU can get upset. But like outside of those three for sure, dude, like everybody else in the SEC, it's almost like they're just beating up on each other. So like there's some results people look at and they're saying, how in the world this, that? We're like, I'm like, it happens every year. You cannot pick chalk in this league because like I just look at the East. You got Georgia at the top. Dude, I'd honestly say outside of that, I mean, maybe Vandy's the long shot, but like anybody can beat anybody. Truly.
Yep.
The West the same way. I mean, you've got Ole Miss, Arkansas, Mississippi State, Auburn. They could all finish with the same record. Like we've seen that happen before. So,
It's
you know,
ridiculous.
when you see these picks coming out, that's what I remind Gamecock fans too. It's like South Carolina may not lose to Mississippi State, but like when you look at swing games, like you have to predict there's going to be chaos that ensues. It's why we love college football. Upsets are going to happen. It's inevitable. So,
No, I mean, Chris, last year LSU's over under win total was 7. They won the West. They beat Bama.
Right.
They beat Ole Miss. Like all these, just the chaos itself. Taking a step further, TCU went 5-7 in 2021, made the playoff in 2022. So everybody likes to, speak in terms of chalk right now. Of there's no way X, Y, and Z team beats insert next team right there. Because right now it's easy to say, yeah, they have a better roster. Yeah, they're probably going to have better circumstances, and we're all living in this ideal world. You and I both know when you roll a ball out there on Saturday, when you finally have toe meet leather, like all bets are off, you got to go have your 11 be better than theirs. So I think the level of chaos is so tricky to predict right now because the heat always comes in so strong whenever you predict Mississippi State to beat South Carolina or what have you. And then come whatever week it is, of course, the circumstances fall into exactly how none of us predicted.
Now, JD, I want to switch gears a little bit before we get into some SEC Media Days chatter. Obviously, really excited for the event in Nashville, but I want to talk a little recruiting from this standpoint because I've noticed over the last couple of days, there's been a lot of chatter. There's been increased chatter about, anytime new recruiting rankings drop and guys move up and down, right? I mean, we've seen Dylan Stewart go from, and I'm not going to pretend like I know exactly like what On3 did or because there's 24/7, there's rivals or you guys, of course, obviously you guys, I would say probably the leaders in the industry or one of the leaders, obviously, behind Shannon Terry, the great things he's doing. Either way, I'm just curious, though, to get your take because I know you're a guy, you talk recruiting, but you're not like a crystal ball guy, whatever. So
sure,
I'm just curious when it comes to this time of year, when it comes to changing up recruiting rankings, again, we've seen a guy like Dylan Stewart go from number 1 to number 10. We've seen Dylan Raiola fall off. Like, I guess my question is this. And you don't even have to answer this because I know it's a question that maybe it's a better off the record type thing. But it's like, I just wonder because I get the business, I get content, I get creating conversation. It's good for business. I get it. Are the player rankings more about they're really trying to like, we want to get this right? Or is it about creating conversation and keeping the rankings relevant? Because I get both sides. I do. But like, I think where fans have trouble seeing, and especially when it's like, I mean, Gamecock fans forever have felt this. They call it the cock drop. It's like when a guy starts expressing interest in South Carolina, his ranking goes down, right? And I mean, listen, it's fair. I get it, the bias. If Nick Saban offers a defensive back a scholarship, he's probably pretty good. Like, I understand how that works. But again, to my question, like how much of it has to do with actual, like, okay, we've watched some more tape and we found some things we maybe are higher on than we expected, lower on, or is it about creating conversation? Or is it a mix of the two? Like you said, I'm saying, like, I'm obviously not trying to say anybody out here in the recruiting circles is trying to be like a, just moving guys around for the sake of it. But at the same time, I think some fans maybe think that way. And I've seen some of the chatter on social media around that.
Yeah, I think I'll say this for Charles Power. Like, he is a guy that is locked into the process and just the overall skill that comes into projecting players. And he takes enormous pride in the NFL draft. Like, Charles Power is concerned, and I say Charles Power, who, for those of y'all that don't know, director of scouting ranks for us here at On3, and really puts his name behind those rankings. I mean, he's trying to win the NFL draft in 4 years for these kids that are in high school right now. I think the thing that's most interesting, we've seen it the most with Florida in the last couple of days. There's been a lot going on with Florida Twitter, and I love the Florida fan base, man. Like, I'm sure there's probably
that really is what sparked this question.
Right,
that's what sparked this question because I think it was a podcast that had Shannon Terry on, and they were like, I was like, I kind of respect. They're trying to grill him right now, which he handled it
Yeah,
very well, but they obviously were not happy about some things. I thought that
sure.
was interesting.
Sure. And I think the whole thing is fascinating because when you zoom out, Chris, like you take the Florida fan base. And again, love the Florida fan base. We talk about Florida a lot on our show. I'm sure you're probably not allowed to say that on the Spurs Up show. But when it comes to Florida, like let's just think about this from a business standpoint. Florida, massive fan base. One of the biggest fan bases in college football, one of the most influential fan bases in college football when you want to go to like the digital media space. What purpose would it serve a company like On3 to intentionally agitate that fan base, just drop their guys so we got it out for Florida? Like that whole thing in itself, I feel like would just be, if that was the approach, that'd be a bad business approach. To Charles Power, and Shannon said this, I think, when he was on the show. He's like, man, his kryptonite and his superpower is like he couldn't care less where these kids are going. Like obviously there's an element of like, you want to project these guys, and sometimes you see the schools be ahead of the rankings and maybe offer a kid before they become, a certain ranking with us. But no, I mean, I think back to your original question, I really, there's zero interest, I think, in creating conversation or making headlines. Like, again, Charles Power is trying to win the NFL draft, and looking at this past cycle, this past draft class, like I would say he's absolutely done that with the number of kids that got drafted in the first round and that he had as 5 stars with his time at 24/7. So the whole thing is fun. And honestly, this whole story in itself, I guess story I put in quotation marks, it makes me feel a lot more like, all right, we're getting to the point in the year where we just got to get college football back. Like we're at the point where we're analyzing rankings. Like some of these kids too, Chris, like they had the same ranking before they committed and after they committed. And people are frustrated with the variation between what we have them at versus other services. It's like Charles Power is like worried about what Charles Power is doing. On3 is worried about what On3 is doing. And the variance is the variance, no disrespect to those companies. But like Charles Power is based it off what he feels, sees, and believes, as well as the rest of our team that's involved in the rankings. So anyway, yeah, we need college football back because we're talking about rankings and we need to be talking about ball.
JD, I could not agree more, because I make this joke all the time that, Gamecock Twitter has its own drama and other fan bases do as well. And I just tell people, though, it's like, college football fans, they just have this pent up energy that needs to get out. And when it's the summer and there's no ball, they find other avenues to do so. And those are not always the best avenues. We'll just put it
Bro,
that way.
I get it. I'm all about it. Like I'm all for it. I'm all for it.
Yeah, I'm grateful to be someone that gets out that pent up energy with the microphone, the camera, talking to somebody like yourself. So, anyways, I want to move to this too, man. Since we're talking about it, and you have a really unique perspective with On3. I admittedly, obviously, I talk with JC Sherbert at 24/7 Sports every week, and he's actually the leader of one of the collectives, Carolina Rise at South Carolina. And we got on this conversation at NIL, and he was just talking yesterday. He made the comment that, he was someone that started on early on in the recruiting space, I think at Rivals or what have you, and whatever. He saw the evolution and the way recruiting changed, that landscape, message boards, whatever. He said NIL is happening, and I'm paraphrasing here, but he said NIL is basically happening twice as fast. Like the way that it's a daily thing changing. I saw a graphic from, I believe it was Texas like 2 days ago, where athletes have made like $15.5 million. And so you guys, I mean, I don't think there's anybody out there who's more connected with NIL than On3, because I mean, it's really cool how you can see the players and you can see their NIL evaluation. You can see what they're worth. Your thoughts on the way the NIL is constantly changing day by day and what you expect for it. Like if you had to project, because I made this joke yesterday, but JD, I think it's true. I think like 20, 30 years from now, maybe less, we're probably going to get a 30 for 30 on NIL and the way that it changed college football, because I feel like it's changing that much at a rapid pace.
Yeah, it's unbelievable because I think it all happened so quickly, right? Like I think, and I'm going to be fuzzy on the details here, but I believe the NCAA was essentially under the gun, and they're like, hey, we got to put something in place here quick, fast, and hurry, and threw NIL together. And when it first started, there was, to my knowledge, not a ton of regulation. It was kind of the Wild West was a term that was thrown around early on. And now we've kind of got to this place where, you have services like us here at On3 providing NIL valuations, and there's a lot going on with collectives and the structure of that. So I think, Chris, the best term that I could put to it is the structure of NIL, I think, is continuing to move in a positive direction. And I think the early perception of NIL was you got all these people trying to take advantage of kids, and you got all these crazy figures being thrown around. And I think there's probably like a version of truth to that at the beginning. But I think at this point in time, we have a lot of good people getting into the space, a lot of people that have the best interest of the sport and these kids at heart, and understanding that this is a place where there's a ton of money to be made for everybody involved, and it needs to be done in an orderly fashion and with good structure. So I think as we get further and further into NIL, my hope would be the last episode of that Netflix series talking about NIL, whenever that does come out, is okay, we have arrived at a place where the future is bright. These kids are getting what they're worth, and everybody involved is doing it above board because we have the structure in place and we have the right people a part of it.
So, JD, let's move into SEC Media Days. Really excited to get to Nashville and meet you in person, my man. It's going to be a really good time. But when you talk about top storylines, I mean, anytime you get all 14 teams together, and I guess this will be the last year, it's just 14 teams with the addition of Texas and Oklahoma, which on that note, JD, side note, I mean, we talk about how much of an event that SEC Media Days has become. Add in Texas and Oklahoma. I mean, I just can't even fathom what that's going to be like next year. But either way, next week in Nashville, there are so many storylines. You think about Georgia and the quote-unquote culture issues that Kirby Smart's going to be asked about. You know, Jimbo Fisher's obviously fascinating, getting back, getting off the schneid. Bobby Petrino was OC. LSU's trying to go back-to-back in the West. Oh, by the way, Lord Nick Saban will speak. When he talks, it's pretty noteworthy, right, about Alabama and them bouncing back as the dynasty on the way out. Greg Sankey, obviously the commissioner, not just the SEC, in my opinion, but at this point, he's kind of the dude in college football. What he says kind of it moves mountains, if you will. And then you go to the East, and you got Josh Heupel with Tennessee. They're trying to show that Tennessee football's back. Shane Beamer, of course, they're trying to knock on the door of second place. Kentucky, pressure in Missouri. So there are so many fascinating storylines going into SEC Media Days. Name just a couple for you that you're most looking forward to.
I'm just fascinated to hear Lane Kiffin grabbing the mic, man. I mean, every time he says something, it's always good for, a quote graphic, or maybe it's something that you and I are talking about at some point in time with what he's saying, kind of tongue in cheek about X, Y, and Z SEC team. But no, I think the storylines that you hit on, I think, are on the money. I think LSU could very well be the team that the media picks to win the West, which is kind of wild given that, Alabama exists, that there's so much going on at Ole Miss, and that Brian Kelly's only in year 2 at LSU. So I'm curious to see what that voting looks like when it all settles. I mean, could you imagine if we're in a world where Alabama isn't even, number 2? Maybe they finish at 3. But again, I think the media is probably a little bit smarter than that. I don't know anybody's going to, put them that far back. But the whole narrative around Alabama, I think there was something I saw before we jumped on here, Chris, former quarterback of Nick Saban, when he was at LSU, said he's pissed and he's motivated. And I'm like, man, that does not sound like a formula for success for the rest of the SEC. So kind of an interesting spot for Alabama, and a spot we haven't seen Bama in really in some time. So how does Saban handle that, and what are the questions and what are the answers for him when it comes to, the whole conversation around, well, Bama's starting to slip back and maybe the game's passed him by and who's playing quarterback? I think Bama's probably the one that I'm circling the most to hear what Saban says, and take a step further, the manner in which he answers it. Typically he's a very, collected individual, and he's got very well articulated thoughts. And I'm curious if some of the questioning around Alabama this coming season doesn't maybe just ruffle the feathers a little bit, and if we see maybe a little bit of that pissed off attitude come out at SEC Media Day.
Yeah, I was going to say, JD, I was looking for this post. Alabama has been picked to win the SEC at SEC Media Days in 7 straight seasons. The last team to be picked to win the conference other than Bama was Auburn in 2015. However, Bama was picked to win the SEC West that same season, despite Auburn being picked to win the conference. So, I mean, to your point, it's just been a long time. So will the media, and I'll be one of them that'll be voting on it, and I got LSU winning the West, man. I got LSU at 11-1, 7-1. Believe it or not, guess who I got to lose to? Mississippi State. I don't know what I got into an upset ride with Mississippi State, man. I don't know what it was. I think they're going to be playing for the Pirate this year, man. Don't sleep on the Bulldogs. Let's go specific to South Carolina, JD. Shane Beamer bringing along Spencer Rattler, Tonka Hemingway, Kai Kroger. Love the selections. Obviously, Rattler speaks for itself. You get your leader on defense and Tonka up front, and then Kai Kroger continuing to build the Beamer Ball brand, my guy, bringing a punter. I think he's the only punter going to SEC Media Days. But I'll ask you this as a whole, and again, sticking with the Gamecocks, what's something you would most like to learn from South Carolina, their appearance, maybe something you want to hear from Shane Beamer? Is there anything specifically that you'd like to learn about the Gamecocks from SEC Media Days?
I think I'm just fascinated to see. I want to be careful how I say this. I'm curious to see what kind of air Spencer Rattler has to him when he shows up at SEC Media Day, because I think there's been so many question marks following him throughout his time, really since he was dubbed the #1 overall pick after doing what he did against Florida in that bowl game at Oklahoma, and then he ends up losing his job and transferring, and he's just such a pulverizing figure. And it feels like at the end of last year, he really just kind of got comfortable. We saw a new confidence with him. He kind of just seemed like he was at peace with his situation and who he was. He wasn't trying to prove anything anymore. And at SEC Media Day, I mean, you and I both know it's going to just be a prodding and trying to, ask different questions. And, hey, Spencer, tell us about your interceptions. Like, there's going to be so many things thrown his way. And so I'm just curious, do we see a Spencer Rattler that, tries to, make a statement and try and, answer the media and go Spencer versus the media? Not that he's going to be, making some kind of outburst, but tries to make an answer to, almost overcome the question, if that makes sense. Or if it's a thing where Spencer Rattler is just kind of cool with letting his play do the talking in the fall. So that's not to say Spencer Rattler is some sort of, brash individual who's going to make headlines and make a scene at SEC Media Day, but I do think there's something to be said for how he answers those question marks with, some of the slow starts he had last year and picking up where he left off at the end of the year.
Yeah, JD was disappointed when he didn't go last year. Totally understood it, though. A guy who never stepped foot on campus and had not taken a snap yet. But I'd be lying to you if I said I'm not extremely excited to hear from Rattler. And like you mentioned, Lane Kiffin, he's always got a quote good for a graphic. I got a feeling Rattler might have one in him as well. So it's going to be a lot of fun. JD PicKell of On3, one of the best in the business. And again, someone I'm grateful to call a friend. JD, last thing before I get you out of here. There's going to be 5 quarterbacks in Nashville at SEC Media Days. KJ Jefferson from Arkansas, Jaden Daniels from LSU, Will Rogers from Mississippi State, Spencer Rattler from South Carolina, and Joe Milton from Tennessee. If you had to pick one of those, which of the quarterbacks will be the best dressed at SEC Media Days next week?
Ooh. Hey, I wasn't ready for that one. I thought we were going another direction. I thought it was what you taking, to lead a game-winning drive. Best dressed, man. I've seen some of the pregame hype videos for Tennessee, and you always get a little bit of Big Throw Joe in there. He's got the shades, probably got a little bit of ice on him. I'm going to go ahead and lean Joe Milton right now for best dress. But I think the dark horse, KJ Jefferson, I think pulled up with a fitted to last year at SC Media Days. Did he not? I think he had like a Yankees hat.
Yeah, I believe so.
Some kind of cool hat. And I'm like, dude's a baller. Like, you show up with a fitted to SC Media Days, you can play a little bit. So those two guys, I think, are going head to head as my 1 and 2 seeds for best dress.
The fits will be on point for sure. Nashville, Tennessee, the site of SEC Media Days next week. JD, again, I appreciate you taking the time, and I'm so excited to get to meet you finally in person next week, my friend. It is going to be an absolute blast.
Should be a good one, Chris. Appreciate you having me on, man. We'll get after it next week.
Yes, sir. JD, keep up the good work. We'll see you soon. Great stuff, guys, from JD PicKell of On3. Always appreciate him taking the time. Guys, we're going to jump into a quick break, but on the other side, we begin our Q&A Power Hour. I want to hear from you, all of your questions, your comments, your calls, and more on the other side of this break. You're tuned in to the Daily Crow.
Muscle Dougie, ho. Muscle Dougie Ho.
All right, guys, we're back here on this Wednesday, July the 12th, 2023. Again, appreciate each and every single one of you tuning in as we begin our Q&A Power Hour here on this Wednesday. Taking your questions, your comments, your calls, 843-790-3377. That is 843-790-3377. Let me say this, by the way, a shout out to my guy Chase, who is our moderator in the Daily Crow. Ever since we put him on, because, I was someone, just let the comments roll in, whatever, no big deal. I underestimated the craziness of some folks. And really, since Chase has been that guy in that mod spot, the chatter has been much, much more higher quality. I will say that. So thank you, Chase. I appreciate you. Guys, let's get into your questions here. We'll go back to the top of the chat. Austin Gregory checking in from Mount Vintage. Love that golf course. Really good place. Really good. Let's see. Bruin Nation said, John Edwards still has me blocked. Still broke up with me, I see. Come home, brother. John Edwards said, won't be on the whole show, going to a service this afternoon for some friends from high school whose grandmother died. Well, I hate to hear that, John Edwards, if you're still in here. Yes, Austin Gregory, as mentioned earlier, Sims are starting soon. Going to be a good time. They'll stream all right here, live on YouTube. Ethan says this. I feel that we're really underestimating North Carolina. May will be the best quarterback we see all year. And if our defense is all over the place in the first game, they will put up points. Be ready for high scoring. Ethan, you bring up a really interesting point. And it poses this question to me because Drake May is very good, right? I know he had a really, really tough ending to his season. But it brings this topic to the forefront, which I think is intriguing. Ethan, who would you say, and everybody, I open this up to the masses, who is the best quarterback the Gamecocks will face this year? Is it Drake May? Is it someone else? Could it be Joe Milton by season's end? Could it be Cade Klubnik by season's end? Could it be Will Rogers? Somebody I'm really high on. Who is the best quarterback? Is it Drake May? I mean, honestly, is it Drake May that South Carolina, is that the best quarterback they face all season? Ethan says Clayton White will be on the hot seat this season. He could. Ruination. I think he's talking about Jimmy Lindsey here. He could recruit. He couldn't coach him up, unfortunately, for some reason. Yeah, I mean, that was evident for sure. Let's see. Ethan says Torian Gray and Travian are our two best defensive coaches. Spur Daddy says the cornerbacks and safeties will have to take up for the slack for the defense up front. Spur Daddy also says Birch is the most overrated five-star Carolina has ever signed. I mean, I'll say this about Jordan Birch, and I got to watch my words because if you're not careful, people will just freak out for whatever reason. But, I mean, listen, Jordan, people got really – what was funny about last year is that I said in the preseason, I didn't call him a bust. I said that if he doesn't begin to pan out this year, folks will throw him in the bust category. That's all I said. And people, of course, freaked out. Some of his family members even, if I see you out in public, I'm going to get you. You're not going to do shit. Get out of here. Anyways, people freaked out. And at the end of the season, I gave Jordan Birch credit for his best season as a Gamecock. It was funny, though, to watch when he hit the transfer portal, went to Oregon, labeled a bust by those same people. I'll just say this about Jordan Birch. Was he a developmental five-star and not a guy like a Jadeveon Clowney who could be an immediate impact guy? Coming out of Hammond, we now know that was most certainly the case. But when you have the profile, the recruiting profile of a guy like Jordan Birch, and you put up the stats you did, you're a bust, man. Flat out. You're a bust. You're the second highest rated signee in the history of South Carolina football behind Jadeveon Clowney. I guess blame the recruiting services for putting unfair expectations on you, because if you weigh that versus the production, you're a bust. It's not even a hot take. You're a bust. So I hate to say it. Now, with that being said, is it funny enough? I'd take Jordan Birch back. If all this stuff about him, not liking Oregon was true, I'd take him back. But that's just the reality, man. Whether you like it, dislike it, what have you, that's the reality. So Spur Daddy says, I really enjoy your content. Thank you, Spur Daddy. I appreciate it. Ethan says, UNC is very similar to us this year. Pass heavy with a great quarterback, new OC, questionable defense, and a lot of unknowns. We have the advantage, I think, in special teams, and that may be what it takes. Yeah, Ethan, I will say, I think South Carolina, North Carolina, I think those two teams, there are a lot of similarities between the two. I will say you are right. Their defense, I think, is definitely worse than South Carolina's. But in regards to question marks and things we're talking about, these are two teams. And I think that's why you see the spread is so close. Spur Daddy says, I'm inviting you guys all in the live chat on here to join in the live chat on YouTube every day on Offsides with Mark Ryan. We have a blast in there every single day. Yeah, definitely do. Go support Mark. Go support his show. Will Buckner says, what about the DB wide receiver transfer from Tennessee? D'Angelo Gibbs. Yeah, he could do something.
Dalton.
Let's jump to the phone lines here. Dalton, what's going on, my friend? How are you?
How's it going, man?
I'm doing fantastic. Doing fantastic, man. I appreciate you calling. What's up?
So I sort of wanted to steer the conversation over to special teams.
Mm-hmm.
I know you haven't done your special teams unit previews yet, but as we all know, special teams has been probably the biggest asset to this football team, to help win games, to help turn those one-score games around. My question is, do you think that, we'll continue to be able to create those, block punts, those trick plays for a touchdown, things of that nature? Or do you think that going into the matchup with South Carolina, these other teams' coaches are going to be focusing heavily on special teams and sort of getting rid of our opportunity to, get a big trick play for a touchdown or something like that?
And I think that's a great question, Dalton. And again, we will talk special teams in depth on Friday. But I mean, to your point, if I'm an opposing coach and I'm going up against South Carolina, my number one nearly goal and objective is to say, do not let them beat us on special teams. Make special teams just a facet of the game. We don't even have to win special teams, but it's even. It's not a facet that they take from us. It's not an area of the game where they're able to make a game-changing type of play that could potentially change the outcome. Because, right, I mean, I'm sure you've seen the stats. Like when you block a punt, you block a field goal. When you have a play on special teams that's impactful, a return for a touchdown, your odds of winning, like 80% of the time, the teams that do those things, they win the game, right? I mean, it really, truly is a huge part of the game. So, I feel like, Dalton, your question is, like, can you count on it this season? And I'll say this, I mean, I go into a season saying, I'm not exactly sure you can, but I felt that same way last year. And I mean, from the jump, Carolina blocked 2 punts against Georgia State, and we saw the impact it had in the Texas A&M game. We saw the impact it had in the Clemson game. So I will tell you this. I think anytime you have a punter-kicker combo like Kai Kroger, Mitch Jeter, you're in a really good position. And I think anytime you have a special teams coach like Pete Limbo and, of course, Shane Beamer doing his thing as well, assisting, I mean, how many games is it going to win you? I don't know for sure, but you have to think, you have to factor that in. That's good for a win or two every year until we see otherwise, right? I mean, until we see otherwise, it feels like special teams is going to be part of the brand and the fabric of this program, similar to what Frank Beamer did at Virginia Tech.
Yeah, I mean, it'll be interesting to see because by now that sort of reputation of South Carolina's really good on special teams. They draw up trick plays and they execute them really well. That most other coaches aren't ready for, and I just think similar to how I feel about the gimmicky offense at Tennessee, I kind of feel like the coaches are going to be doing whatever they can to get rid of that, trick play opportunity from the South Carolina special teams unit. Obviously, it has to do with the execution of the players on the field, and you don't want to, try trick play every single game because if you don't convert it, then it ruins your momentum a lot of the time. But I just think we're going to be seeing a different approach here just because, going into any matchup with the Gamecocks, that's going to be a factor. South Carolina knows it. The opposing team knows it. The opposing players know it. So,
and I tell you this,
I think that could be a.
Yeah, I was not to cut you off, Dalton, but I just wanted to echo your point because I want to say this. You're making great points. Some people out there may try to label you as, oh, he's being negative, but like, no, you make great points, Dalton. I agree with you. Because on the positive side, it's like, hey, we have an opportunistic defense that's forcing turnovers. We're scoring points off defense. We have an opportunistic special teams. We're scoring points off special teams. But can you bank on that? I mean, we've seen this firsthand, and I certainly don't want to compare the Beamer era to the Muschamp era in any way, but like we saw this in year 2 when South Carolina won 9 games, won the Outback Bowl, had a very opportunistic defense. And the next year, those turnovers didn't come at that rate. And what we realized was, wow, 2017 was a lot of smoke and mirrors because of an opportunistic defense. And so I am not sitting here saying that South Carolina, what they've done to the first 2 years, has been smoke and mirrors of any kind. Like, there are 3 phases to the game. And South Carolina is taking it upon themselves to win special teams damn near every game. And for a team like the Gamecocks, who's looking to overachieve, winning special teams can be the difference in getting that extra win or two every year that helps you hit that mark. But to your point, Dalton, you're making great points. If coaches focus on it and it gets taken away, well, then what? Are you still going to be able to win football games and hit your goals if you're not able to get some of those special teams plays you got last year? But again, on the other side, I say too, at that same time, that South Carolina, they take such pride in doing it. They spend so much time on it that at this point, I'd just be really surprised if special teams was not something that, you bank on for a couple scores a year and some trick plays and winning a game or two. So, but again, you make great points, Dalton. I just wanted to reinforce that because some people are going to say, how could he say that? You're not being negative at all. You're raising valid concerns. You're raising valid concerns because right now, South Carolina is masking defensive deficiencies with turnovers, and they're masking deficiencies as a whole as a football team with special teams. That's what's happened the first 2 years. Let's call it for what it is. So if the special teams don't come at that rate, can you still have a good season this year? That's the question.
If it's effective, obviously that's good, right? I'm not saying I hope we don't continue to block punts or get turnovers on special teams or do trick plays for touchdowns. I think if there's that opportunity there and our coaching staff thinks that they can execute it and have success executing it, then by all means go for it. And if it works, then that's great. But the thing that I think you have to focus on is that, now there's that reputation going into whatever game. And that reputation was present last year, but we saw so many of those trick plays, so many of those special teams, block punts go South Carolina's way. I think, to your point, these coaches are going to be sitting in the film room saying, South Carolina has the best special teams unit in the country. They've got the best special teams coaches in the country. we cannot allow them to beat us on special teams,
Yep.
because if you allow the opposing team to block a punt, then that changes the outcome of games to a very, very large degree statistically, as we've already talked about. So, I'm hoping we continue to find success in that area, but, obviously we have to get better in other areas. So if we do have a game where we can't rely on having a big special teams play, that, we can still win just because we're a well-rounded football team.
Yep. I mean, again, Dalton, to your point, if I'm an opposing coach, I'm taking special teams away and I'm making South Carolina, hey, we're going to line up our best 11 on offense, our best 11 on defense. You put yours out there, you're going to have to beat us straight up. No funny business, no kickoff returns, no punt returns, no nothing. You're going to have to beat us straight up. Now, easier said than done when you got a guy like Pete Limbo on the South Carolina side, Shane Beamer on the South Carolina side, and Kai Kroger, Mitch Jeter, the returners they have. But to your point, I would be stunned if opponents are not playing that way. Like, if you're kicking to South Carolina at this point, you're just silly. You're a fool. You know what I mean? Like, if you're not max protect on punts and kicking out of bounds, you're a fool. Like, I expect that to happen. How does South Carolina counteract? We'll see. Dalton, great stuff as always, my friend. I appreciate you calling in.
All right, you have a good one.
Yeah, man. Take care. Great stuff from our guy, Dalton. Always appreciate him taking the time. Let's get back into your questions on YouTube. Let's see. Ethan says, remember that we struggled with Georgia State early on last year at home. You never know in the first game. Yeah, UNC, though, their defense was terrible a season ago. Spur Daddy's locking in his prediction, 41-38 Gamecocks. I was really surprised that Mark Ryan picked North Carolina to win. That one kind of threw me for a loop. I got to be honest. That threw me for a loop there. Let's see. Ethan says, May is better than any SEC quarterback this year, in my opinion. We need the defense ready to rock right out of the gate because they score frequently and they can score quickly. I mean, to your point, Ethan, they were very good on offense, and I think they'll be good on offense yet again. How do they adjust to losing Phil Longo? That's another question. And based off the NFL ratings, Drake May is the best quarterback, or one of the best in the country, if not the best in the country. But those are NFL ratings. What does that mean on the field? We'll see. Spur Daddy says that's why Coach Beamer's coaching job last year was so amazing. They won 8 games and beat two top 10 teams with an average rush game and an awful rush defense. I would not even call the rush game average. I'd call it bad. Both of it was bad. Spur Daddy says Clayton's job could be on the line if they rank outside of the top 100 in rush defense again. I think it'd take a really porous year defensively for Clayton White to be on a true hot seat of that nature, but something just got to get fixed in the rush defense, man. Got to get fixed. Hudson says, we're recruiting in the right direction in both areas, but I don't see it reflecting this year, probably more so on the defense, though. TaylorMade says it does swing both ways. Do we win the Kentucky game with Will Levis playing? Do we win the A&M game if they field a real team versus whatever that was? There's always a yin and yang. Yeah, TaylorMade for sure. I mean, there's always what ifs, right? You just hope you're on the right side of more of those what ifs than not, right? I mean, we can talk these hypothetical scenarios until we're blue in the face, right? I mean, we can. So I'm certainly not like looking at last year and year one and trying to poke holes in the results. But everything that Dalton was saying, I think, was fair. I do. Hudson says I'm in the 5-7, 8-4 area of where we'll finish this year. However, I think we'll see a big jump next year to 8-10 wins. Ethan says if you put May on Florida this year, they could contend for second in the East. He is that good. TaylorMade also says there is a world where South Carolina has less wins, but is a better team. TaylorMade, it's funny because folks can't grasp that, my guy. They can't grasp that. They can't grasp that concept, TaylorMade. But you're right. You're right. That world exists. You're absolutely right. He says can't count on, or he or she says can't count on freshmen in the SEC, especially on the lines of scrimmage. That's a good point. It's a very good point. Let's see. Continuing the conversation. Austin Gregory, sorry, I'll let him know at SEC Media Days. He says, let JD PicKell know that he is my number one power-rated guest speaker. Yeah, JD's the man. Marion R26, Chris, will you ever do the lightweight, dry fit type of shirts? Good for those noon games. Marion, I'd say if you want a shirt like that, these polos, super lightweight. They are made by Adidas, super lightweight, awesome, awesome shirts. Mayhem said I was stiff. Am I stiff? I'm just chilling, man. I'm actually very chill. I'm actually Mayhem far less stiff than I was at the old studio, because the old studio, I was like sitting at attention, right? I was stiff in the old studio. So bro, this chair, game changer, my guy. Game changer. My guy Chase says, I got you. You're the man, Chase. Appreciate you. Austin Gregory, the question we're all dying to know is this: Hawaii or Vandy in week 0, which, by the way, the Big Cock Club Discord, I can assure you, be watching Hawaii and Vanderbilt in week 0. I got the Commodores, man. I got the Doors taking down Hawaii. Austin Gregory says the best quarterback we'll face is Drake May by 2.5 miles. Brew Nation says Devin Leary, maybe. Maybe so. Jeff Gullidge, do you think our defense will have any shout-outs or single-digit games this season? Do I think they'll have a game? I mean, they could. I don't know that I picked it. Missouri could be one for sure. You know, that game, guys, you look back at the history, it's gone under the total like every year. Like it's just the under's the play in that game every single year. Austin Hicks is trying to really get the convo going again. He says, let's just say things don't go good this year and we only get 3 or 4 wins. Are people calling for Beamer's job? How do you think Gamecock Nation would react? Would it still be trust in Beamer? Austin chose violence on today's show. Austin, let me just say this, because nobody is going to like that question. And I mean nobody will like that question, okay? Let's see. Somebody replied and said, Austin Gregory said winning 3 or 4 is not even a remote possibility. Let's not say 3 or 4. Let's just say 5 and 7. Let's even say 6 and 6. I mean, guys, if you're in the camp that would be switching up and calling for Beamer's job, I mean, you're off your rocker. I mean, truly. But guys, will there be a portion of the fan base doing that? You know as well as I do there will be. Absolutely. Guys, college football is a week-to-week game. It changes drastically week to week. I mean, we literally saw this last year, guys. I recall after the Florida game, the noise around Beamer was real, dude. Not like fire him, but people were really disgruntled about no changes at OC. Like, why are you not firing Satterfield? So listen, I'll just say this, Austin. I'll just say this. No coach is immune to losing, to the effects of losing, I should say. No coach is immune to the effects of losing. And nobody likes to hear it. Nobody wants to hear it. I'm most certainly not comparing the two. Please don't think I am. But had TSUS, had the Daily Crow existed at like the way it does right now, had the Daily Crow existed back in 2019, the way it exists right now, I'm about to piss some of you off, but had the Daily Crow existed this same exact date 4 years ago, and you asked that question, Austin, about Will Muschamp, the defense of Will Muschamp would have been exactly the same as it is about Shane Beamer. Exactly the same. Carolina coming off winning the Outback Bowl, hell, won more games in year 2. So I remember a time not so long ago that when South Carolina lost to UNC 2019, I called for Muschamp's job. I felt the wrath of those who loved Will Muschamp. And it's funny to watch those same people. You know, they hate Muschamp now. The popular thing is to hate Will Muschamp. But those same people wanted me exiled from the fan base for calling for his job. So nothing's impossible. Do I think it's going to happen? Absolutely not. I don't. I think what Shane Beamer and company are doing, the way they're recruiting, the momentum they have, I don't think you're going to see. Listen, you're not going to see that drop off. I don't see that. But I'm just saying. And it's very different, right? That's the other thing too, because I've heard Mark Ryan talk about records and Beamer's got to do this to not have the same record. But dude, to try to compare Muschamp's first 2 years to Beamer's first 2, it's just flat out disrespectful. A pair of top 10 wins in year 2, beating Clemson, something Will Muschamp didn't even get remotely close to. They're not even comparable. But to the point of Austin Hicks and to the point of his question, nothing is impossible. Nothing's impossible. It can turn so quickly, especially with college football fans who have no patience. Guys, we all know this. Have no patience whatsoever. If we get to year 5 and South Carolina still winning 6 or 7 games, there's going to be a portion of the fan base that's going to be like, I'm good. And that's a shame. It really is. That's a shame. Because I think with Beamer, guys, I look at Beamer. I said it when he was hired. I'm in it for the long haul with Coach Beamer. I'm in it for the long haul. Because admittedly, something South Carolina has done, it's been a revolving door of coaches. That was the argument about Will Muschamp and why people did not want him fired. But when you know somebody's not the guy, when you know they're not the right choice, and you don't act on it, you're delaying the inevitable. So that was why I felt that way. We just knew. It's like, this is not the guy. He sucks. He failed at Florida. Like, what are we expecting? When it comes to Shane Beamer, man, I think South Carolina be best served unless things go south. I think as long as the Gamecocks are making bowl games, winning 7-8 games a year at minimum, I think you need to lock in for a decade. Build some consistency within the football program. Because people will scoff. Oh, you're winning 8 games a year. God, you got a loser mentality. I never forget when old buddy James Reynolds said that last year. You got a loser mentality if you're going if you think 8-4 is good enough. Dude, if Carolina got to a place of going 8-4 every year, guys, do you realize what that would mean for South Carolina football? Like, do you actually have perspective? If Shane Beamer's, like, let's say this year they go 8-4, which could very well happen. If Shane Beamer is able to elevate the floor of South Carolina football from 5-7 or 6-6, where it's been historically, right? You look at the overall record. Historically, this is a 6-6 program. Just mediocrity, flat out. If Shane Beamer, over his tenure, if he does nothing else other than takes the floor from that 5-7, 6-6 range to an 8-4 mark, where 8-4 becomes the benchmark, guys, I argue he's the greatest coach in school history for that simply alone. That is such a program changer. And I'm not saying just do it 1 year or two. Like if Shane Beamer's able to get South Carolina football to a point where every year consistently they're winning 8 to 9 games, he's the greatest coach in school history, guys. You can call that loser mentality. You can call that whatever, but I call it perspective. And having perspective for 115 years of football. Vanderbilt has won 8 games or more in a season, more in their history than South Carolina has. Think about that. The next time you scoff at an 8-win season. Think about that. It blows my mind. The people that bring up or that predict 10 wins and 11 wins. Guys, South Carolina has won double-digit games 4 times in their history. Like, I'm not saying history defines you, but forgive me for wanting to see Carolina get to 10 wins in a season consistently before I pick 10 wins. Because before they do something of the sort, they don't deserve to be picked that. You got to earn respect before you get respect. Ryan says you bring up history, but with this is not normal South Carolina history with NIL and stadium upgrades. Ryan, you make a great point. This is not normal times anymore. But Ryan, could I argue it's harder now? It might be even more difficult for South Carolina to get to the heights some want them to get to. Because guess what? You heard JC yesterday. The Gamecocks are fighting an uphill battle in the NIL space. Why, I don't know. But they are. They don't have the money of a Tennessee. They don't have the money of a Texas A&M. They don't have the money of a Georgia. They don't have the money probably of even a Florida. I don't know. Like, Ryan, I don't think NIL is something where we should be able to say, well, NIL is a reason that we're not like that over. I mean, dude, NIL, you could argue, is making it tougher on Carolina. In some regards, I mean, they're holding their own in NIL. Let me say that. South Carolina is holding their own because, I mean, you get a guy like Nicholas Harbor, you're in it for Dylan Stewart. If they land him, you got Spencer Rattler. Like, South Carolina, I think, is doing fairly well in NIL. Could they do better? Sure. But, I mean, so could everybody else. But I think if people are able to be patient, give Shane Beamer time, the results will be what we all hope for. Guys, we're going to jump into a quick break. On the other side, I want to continue to hear from you. More of your questions, comments, calls, and more. You're tuned in to the Daily Crow.
Muscle Dougie Ho. Muscle Dougie, ho.
All right, guys, we're back here on this Wednesday, July the 12th, 2023. Appreciate each and every single one of you tuning in, guys. Austin Gregory said it's a push. The over-under on the break is 5 minutes. I should have done something like, I don't know, made it delay or something like that. Either way, appreciate each and every single one of you tuning in. Really excited to be chatting with you all today, guys. The content continuing to bleed out the eyeballs. And, you know, I thought about maybe dropping like a content calendar for you all. I don't know that that's really necessary because you guys just consume the content as it comes, if you will. But, you know, I've got the entire preseason planned out. Like literally, I mean, of course, there will be things that come up. We'll have news. We'll have fall camp, practice reports. This player said this coach said that. But, I mean, in regards to preview content, you know, of course, we already gave predictions. We're in the season preview series. Next week, we start the opponent preview series. Which, by the way, really excited to announce I found a guy to talk Furman football. And get this. It's Dan Scott. You might be saying, Chris, who the heck is Dan Scott? Dan Scott is the voice of the Paladins, and he's play-by-play for the Greenville Drive. How about that? How about that? That's going to be a lot of fun. So starting Sunday night, we'll have the full opponent preview series beginning. Sunday night will be UNC. Then Monday will be Furman. Tuesday will be Georgia. Wednesday will be Mississippi State. And then Friday will be Tennessee. And then, of course, the following week will continue, and we'll go from there, man. It's going to be a really good time, a lot of fun. Then after that, we get into our position unit preview series. And, of course, guys, at that point, fall camp will be beginning. Going to be a lot of fun. Really appreciate each and every single one of you guys, and always look forward. The preseason content is just such a blast. So, anyways, let's see as we get back into your questions. Kansas quarterback Jalen Daniels at Big 12 Media Days is rocking a diamond chain that plays his highlights. I can tell what it is, too. It is a diamond chain that serves as a case for an Apple Watch that is playing his highlights. That is really cool. I give him credit. That's a really neat thing. I wonder if anybody at SEC Media Days will take that as an idea and run with it. ESPN College Football posting, what is the best helmet in college football? Let's see. Let me get back on some of these questions here. Our guy Chase says, you want to expand the convo after the show? Join the BCC, and you too can be a slapdick like me. Will Hall says, love Beamer, but until Beamer gets us to a conference championship game, Spurrier has to be the greatest coach. I mean, that's fair. I just think, Will, for the level of consistency we're looking for, you know, no coach has done that. A lot of coaches have had spurts. Nobody's ever had sustained success and consistency. Lynn Turner said, as of next year, making the SEC title games harder than going to the playoffs, you could potentially see a SEC national champion who did not play in the SEC championship game. That's a very fair point, Lynn. So I would say to Will, you know, I think if Shane Beamer, if he never goes to the SEC title, but he takes Carolina to the college football playoff, I think there's an argument there. He's the best coach in school history. Jeff Gullidge says, maybe I'm the only one that feels this way, but I'm going into this season more worried about the offense than the defense. You know, I go back and forth on it, Jeff. I will say this. Maybe I should just say my worry is equal on both sides. You know, because a couple of months ago, I said, you know, I think the offense takes a step forward, defense takes a step back. Then at one point I felt like, man, maybe the offense is going to regress, but the defense is going to be fine, maybe better. I'm just worried about both, Jeff. I'll be honest with you. I'm just worried about both. Austin Hicks says, it's weird. I was listening to the Gamecock Central podcast today, and he was saying we're right there with the schools in NIL, have plenty of it. I mean, Austin, I don't pretend to be an expert in that space, but you heard what J.C. Sherbert had to say yesterday. So do with that information what you will. Do with that information what you will. Ryan says, I'm just saying we can rely on South Carolina history as the scapegoat. Expect better, and you will receive it. Let me focus on that, Ryan, for just a second. Again, he says, I'm just saying we can rely on South Carolina's history as the scapegoat. Expect better, and you will receive it. Let me focus on that, Ryan. Because my counteract to that question is this. Because I hear that a lot from people. And especially those on social media who do not like me very much and think I'm this or that for South Carolina. Whatever, dude. It comes up a lot when giving predictions. Because as you say, expect better and you'll receive it. My question is this. Would you blame the fan base for not expecting more as the reason why South Carolina football has been mediocre forever? Because I think here's what people don't understand. But I think they're learning quickly. I'm not plugged like with the University of South Carolina's football program. My thoughts, opinions, everything I say, I think y'all already know this. It's like my thoughts and opinions do not reflect the attitude of those within the building. So like when I give a prediction and I say that 8-4 is the ceiling and 9-3 be a great year, that's not how they're feeling inside the building. And when analysts talk about college football, they are speaking for themselves. They are not speaking for the program, for those within the building. I think that's where some people get confused as they feel as if the Spurs Up show, Chris Phillips should be speaking for the program, for how the program feels. And it's like, I'm speaking for how I feel. The mood in that locker room, in that building, it is, and it should be, we're going to win every game. The goal is to win the SEC championship. And I see people on social media, it's so funny. I mean, I see some people, they are so over the top, delusional. I have no idea what planet they came from. You make a prediction, you could say the Gamecocks are going 9-3 this year. We ain't lost a damn game till we stepped on the field. I don't know why you picking a loss. We ain't going to lose to nobody. And guys, like every fan base needs those garnet glasses over the top fans that would never, ever, ever, ever pick their team to lose a ball game. But let's say I started doing that. Let's say I just started picking 12-0 every year. That don't mean Carolina's going to go 12-0, guys. Fans think they have more control on the end result than they really do. Let's just call it for what it is. Because, guys, I'm going to tell you right now, I could try to start a movement. Let's sign a petition. Nobody say a bad word about Carolina. Nobody pick the Gamecocks to lose a game ever again. It's not going to change the results on the field, guys. It's not. It's not going to do anything. It's not. So the whole expect better and you'll get more of it, or the loser mentality, bro, my mentality has nothing to do with what South Carolina football does each and every Saturday. Has nothing to do with it. Because if it did, guess what would happen? They'd win every game. We all want Carolina to win every game. But fan mentality has nothing to do with South Carolina football's lack of success. It has nothing to do with it. Now, there are real reasons that we can point to why South Carolina football has not been successful over its history. And I think these reasons have changed. I think politics has played way too much of a part in South Carolina football and the university as a whole. Being in Columbia, being in the capital, I think politics absolutely has played a huge role. The board of trustees. I mean, guys, we hear people talk about it all the time. Who's on the board of trustees making these decisions? The best decision makers have not always been in place at the University of South Carolina, not to a point where winning was the number one objective. South Carolina has missed on coaching hires. They've had a quick trigger with coaching hires. Also, the reality of the recruiting landscape. Being positioned between a Georgia and a Clemson, also a Florida, also a Tennessee. There are real reasons why South Carolina football has not been good over its 115-year history. The attitude of the fans is not one of them. Saying that fans have a loser mentality or not expecting enough. Like, bro, all Gamecock fans have ever done is buy tickets, tailgate, show up to games, rock merchandise, and love their team. That's all Gamecock fans have ever done. The fans are the innocent bystanders. They are not the reason South Carolina football has struggled in its 115-year history. They're not. And again, I don't care how much you may believe it. You're wrong. If you think that just pumping out this blind positivity on social media and picking 12 and over here, it is not going to change or even remotely impact the end result. It's not. It's just flat out not. You couldn't be more wrong. You could not be more wrong. Ryan Cawthon does say this. Good point, Ryan. He says, you say fans have no result, but you also just said if our NIL was higher, we'd win more. Well, Ryan, I'm not speaking on NIL. I'm speaking on just the attitude of fans. Expect more. I mean, Ryan, we can talk about NIL too if you'd like. I think NIL is great. I think if you have the means and you want to give, absolutely, do your part. Hey, if you want to do that, that's great. If you don't want to do that, that's fine. You're not obligated to do it. I can say that I'm grateful for the fact that we've been put in a position to where, you know, through different merchandise deals and through different deals, we've been able to put money back in the pockets of student athletes at South Carolina. That's been awesome. And I would say this to anyone else out there. Of course, I'm not sharing business details on social media because I'm not an idiot. I always laugh at the people that, you know, they especially those on Twitter, they assume the worst because you won't give out details. So if you're not out there trying to, you know, ask for a pat on the back from Gamecock Nation about, look how much I'm giving to NIL, this percentage goes to this, because that's what that is. You're asking for a pat on the back. You need to be reaffirmed and, you know, people tell you how great of a person you are for giving. We've done plenty with NIL, guys. I just don't ask for that pat on the back from people I don't need it from. You know what I mean? So, but I'm not going to reveal things we're doing behind the scenes with percentages and numbers and all that. But I'll also say this too. The difference between the Spurs Up show, myself, and others out there who tout themselves, which is great. I mean, Carolina needs it. Every fan base, every school needs it. The difference is I'm an entrepreneur, and this is a business. Those others out there, they are donors. I'm not trying to be the biggest donor. I'm trying to be a successful entrepreneur. You see, there is a major difference in those two. Not demonizing or praising one or the other. I'm just making the point. Anyways, but the whole NIL thing, I mean, Ryan, this is a fascinating topic. Because those who have the means and give, and that's awesome, and that's great, and you need more of it. But at the same time, Ryan, let me turn the question on you. Is it fair to ask fans and to point the finger now, Ryan, at fans and say, well, we're not winning more because you're not doing enough? You common fan who goes to work 9 to 5 and has a family and has hobbies and has a budget and has expenses, you're not doing enough. Is that fair? I mean, that might be the reality of college football, but is it fair? It's a fascinating discussion. It's a fascinating discussion. It truly is. But my whole point earlier, Ryan, was just simply like, people will come at me for like, oh, you made this prediction 7-5. Like you're the reason because of your predictions and expectations. Dude, I picked a 46-point loss to Tennessee last year, and the Gamecocks won the game. I mean, come on, man. If my predictions swayed everything, I would pick the Gamecocks to go undefeated. I would pick Carolina to win every game. I mean, I would. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know, man. I think any take that puts blame or demonizes the Gamecocks fan base is a bad one. The only take I have about the Gamecocks fan base that's negative is what I already mentioned yesterday, which I'm not going to go into a full spiel, that the 1% to 2% low-life scum of the earth are piece of shit human beings. That's my only negative take. The Carolina Slapdick community, I mean, they're annoying, whatever, but they're harmless. But that 1% to 2% down there at the bottom, scum of the earth. I would say that about if they pulled for any team. I don't give a damn who you pull for. You're just a piece of shit. That's it. Anyways, I'm not going into that any further. But anything that demonizes the Gamecocks fan base, man, is like, I feel like all the fan base has ever done has shown massive support. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know how much more you can ask of the fan base. Anyways, 843-790-3377. Brennan M. made this comment in the Big Cock Club Discord. He says, I'm a bit behind, but a benefit of an elite special teams unit is that you force the opponent to focus on it to an extent that they don't usually. That takes away time from the opponent's practices to worry about offense and defense. Brendan, I hear what you're saying, and I will say this. I think it makes more of an impact during the week when they're doing film study and they're handling that. But I mean, the point you just made, that shouldn't be the case. It shouldn't take any time away, because if you're a good coach and you're a good coaching staff, you're playing a nameless, faceless opponent. You spend the same amount of time on offense, defense, and special teams every week. Your preparation's the same every week. So, Brennan, it's certainly not taking – they're not practicing offense and defense less to focus on special teams. I mean, this is why you have an offensive coordinator, a defensive coordinator, and a special teams coach. So while I get what you're saying, what you're trying to allude to, I would disagree, because you have all those pieces in place to where, like, that should not be the result, if that makes sense. So, anyways, Ryan, Ryan, by the way, to Ryan Cawthon, I don't want you to think I was coming at you in any type of way. I just, you did spark a very interesting conversation. Austin Gregory brings this up. Is there another fan base in the country who's been around for 115 years, seeing as little success as we have, and still has a large, rowdy fan base and sells out games regularly? I don't know if there's another. I mean, listen, it's why Austin Gamecock fans are regarded as some of the best in college ball, if not the best in college football. So, South Carolina fans are as loyal as they come. You know what I mean? Like, Carolina went 0-11, 1-21 over that 2-year stretch in 98-99. Gamecock fans were still showing up, showing out. I don't know that there's many fan bases that would do that. Put it that way. So, Chase, it's hilarious and sad how they think you don't want us to go to undefeated. I mean, Chase, think about this, my guy. It's like, what do you think's better for business? Carolina winning or losing? It's really that simple. It's funny, Chase, to see, and it's funny to see the people on social media, because I asked that question, and there's lunatics out there who think I want Carolina to lose. But really what it comes down to is, like, these people on social media that can't stand me, they have to find reasons, like, why is TSUS? Why is this happening? Who would follow him? So they have to, like, justify. That's why people say stupid stuff like, we buy followers, because they just can't fathom in their brains how it is possible. So when that happens, right? I mean, people write off success as luck. They write off success as bogus. They write off success as whatever they want to write it off as. And they do that because if they had to take accountability for the fact that that wasn't luck at all, it was hard work and skill and dedication to a craft and becoming grossly obsessed with something you're passionate about and working at it and being consistent over and over and over again. If they had to own up to the fact that it took those things and not luck, it would make them look themselves in the mirror and realize it's my fault. I'm not where I want to be. It's not luck. It's my fault. It's my fault. I'm not doing enough. I am not good enough in the venture it is that I am pursuing. I'm not good enough. I have to take ownership of not being good enough. But people don't want to do that. They'd rather write it off as, well, they get lucky and they buy followers. And no, you're just not good enough. You're not good enough. You're not skilled enough. You're not consistent enough. You don't have an open mind. You don't learn. You don't do the things necessary to be successful. It's your fault. Own up to it. You'll be better off. Anyways, the last 2 days have just been... Brewer Nation, there are sites out there. He says, I still need to know how you buy followers. Brewer Nation, there are sites out there where you can buy followers. And it's so funny, in the DM that was sent to the DM that was sent to our guy Bryce, the guy mentioned, like, I know you were thrown off by his follower count, and that's something that can really throw you off, but those are definitely fake followers because nobody's followers increase by 1,000 every Monday for blah 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 blah. Like, I'm like, bro, you're following our followers closer than I am. You know what I mean? So no, I can assure you we have never, ever, ever, ever paid for a follower. To insinuate such, again, is laugh out loud funny. It's just purely laugh out loud funny. It really is. But anyways, I mean, do you expect anything less? Brewer Nation, you didn't miss anything crazy of the last 30 minutes. We've been talking ball. You've just sort of caught me on kind of this random, just whatever. But no, we've been talking about Brewer Nation. It's been a great day. It's been a great day, Brewer Nation. I don't know if you caught yesterday. That was craziness. But it's as we just talked to JD PicKell. We get to this point in the offseason. We're itching for football. We got this pin-up energy. People got to get it out somehow, and unfortunately, some people choose the slap dickery path to release that pent-up energy. Whatever. Either way, guys, we're going to jump into one final break. On the other side, I want to continue to hear from you. More of your questions, comments, calls, and more. You're tuned in to the Daily Crow.
Muscle Dougie, ho. Muscle Dougie, ho.
All right, guys, we're back. Final 10 minutes or so here in the Daily Crow, taking the questions, comments, calls, 843-790-3377. It's so funny. So the pups, they know when the show's about to be over, right? Like they've got the timing. Dogs are very smart, as we know. But they'll hear me say, like, the Daily Crow, or like, it'll be funny when I say, and we'll talk to you all tomorrow. And like, they know what it means. They look at me, they know that it means, okay, that's the end. We're about to go on a WALK. So it's very funny. You can't see them, but over here to my right, the pups are chilling in the studio, just waiting to go on their WALK. Anyways, okay. Bruin Nation said, yeah, I was here yesterday. Austin Gregory says, Chris, I meant to tell you last night in the hangout, I think you're Paul Feinbaum's content by hosting a call-in show. I am Paul Feinbaum's content? Is that what you're saying? Lynn Turner says, do my 33 years of season ticket holder mean I have a mental issue? No, Lynn, no. You love your team and you love college football. And I mean, what's wrong with that, Lynn? You don't have any problems at all. No. Oh, okay. He says, Austin says that I'm stealing Paul Feinbaum's content by hosting a call-in show. Okay. Very good. Well, you know, at least I don't call it, what is that? The Paul Feinbaum show. I guess if I called it the Chris Phillips show, I don't know. I don't think that'd be stealing content either. But I mean, this third hour is the Q&A power hour. At least I'm not sitting here, I don't know. Anyways, I'm going to keep it going. Keep it moving. 843-790-3377, guys. Appreciate each and every single one. I want to say thank you to JD PicKell. Cannot wait to meet JD in person for the first time. Going to be an absolute blast. Hang out with him. Hang out with Braden Gall. Will be there in Nashville. Who else? I mean, we got Brad Crawford. We got SEC Mike and those guys. Going to be a lot of fun. Robbie Davis just texted in. He said, hey, Chris, the reason I just wanted to let you know, the reason I did not call in today is because I'm hanging out with my nephew. Go Gamecocks and the heck with Clemson. Indeed. Hey, Robbie, appreciate you, my guy. Appreciate you, Robbie. Good stuff. No Robbie call today. By the way, I can't believe she has not said anything, but I know because... Oh, is it tomorrow, Chase? Chase, are we sure? Okay, we all right, so we have an issue now. Chase Floyd says tomorrow is the big day. Are you referring, Chase, to the same thing I'm referring? What are you referring to, Chase? Let me make sure we're on the same page. What are you referring to, Chase Floyd? Things could get very interesting here in just a second, depending on what Chase Floyd is talking about. What are you referring to? I'm waiting on Chase to respond. Because if it's what I'm thinking, then we have a bit of a situation. Okay, so Chase says Rebecca, Thursday. You're not wrong. She said Thursday, I believe. However, on my Time Hop app, a year ago today was Rebecca's birthday. So when is Rebecca's birthday? Is it the 12th or the 13th? I don't know. At this point, I don't know. Have we been bamboozled, folks? Have we? When is Rebecca's birthday actually? Like, that's my question. When is it? I don't know. I'm just saying she either got the date wrong last year or this year, because last year her birthday was on July 12th and this year it's on July 13th. Somebody make sense of that. Ryan says, great debate. Wasn't trying to say you were the reason at all. Was more about not relying on history when it's a different landscape. Ryan, you were absolutely correct, my guy. I will say this to the point, we use the past to give us sort of, we're trying to make predictions, projections, whatever, to what's an indicator what may happen. But I agree with you, Ryan. I agree with you. History should not be used as a crutch, especially a crutch, I should say, especially by those in the building of why South Carolina cannot have success. I fully agree with you. And Ryan says we're always right and wrong, and you typically admit when you're wrong, which I appreciate. Yeah, Ryan, listen, I'm not attached to being right. I'm wrong a lot too, and I'm more than happy to admit when I miss the mark or when I'm wrong, what have you. So, Brewer Nation says, where is Dale? I don't know, man. Who knows? Searching for that last $2 he has, I guess. I don't know. Waiting on me to send him back his $2. I was thinking about, guys, really excited. I'm thinking, when should we do our SEC Media Days preview? Because normally, right, I haven't been there ever. Normally, I'm sitting here in the studio, and that would probably air on Wednesday, probably. Like what we most want to learn from Shane Beamer. But, we could do it kind of any day at this point. Maybe that's, maybe that's a Sunday night topic before we get into SEC Media Days, because my plan is SEC Media Days week. A lot of that content, guys, is just going to be recapping the day that was every single day, like on the show. Like I'll probably spend 20, 30 minutes every single day just recapping and detailing what happened and who I met and what we did and all that good stuff. So anyways, it's going to be a lot of fun. I'm looking forward to it. Because I think it's an interesting question, when you the one that I just asked JD PicKell. The one that I just asked JD PicKell about what are you hoping to learn from SEC meetings? Anything in particular? What are you hoping to learn? Is there anything that Shane Beamer could say, could address, that you would like him to address? And I pose this as well. If you could ask Shane Beamer a question at SEC Media Days, what would it be? Is there anything in particular? If you could ask another SEC coach a question, what would it be? Is there anything in particular you'd ask an SEC coach? Okay. All right, guys. We're going to go ahead and wrap it up. We're about to hit 3 o'clock. We have not hit. Let me not cheat you out of the last 2 minutes here. My guy Dave Garrick just sent over. Let's see. Just sent over a mock-up for a banner he's doing. Austin Gregory says, "How do you like the name?" What is the name? The name of what? Austin Gregory, what are you asking me the name of? Guys, again, let me remind you, tsus.store relaunches tomorrow night, a full overhaul of tsus.store. Outside tags, inside tags, new products, the store as a whole getting revamped. Going to be awesome. Cannot wait for you guys to see all the hard work we have been doing behind the scenes. Also, of course, stay tuned. Any preseason events we may be doing. Of course, there is no TSUS tour this summer, but there is a good chance we will be rocking with some events, if you will. So really exciting stuff upcoming. Be sure also hit that subscribe button on YouTube. Hit the bell icon so you get notifications of when we go live. And then, of course, also check us out via podcast. Check us out via podcast, iTunes, Spotify, Stitcher, Google Podcasts, wherever you get your podcast. Okay, Austin has TSUS Hall of Famer's name. I did not know that. I can't see that. Let's see. Let me see this. There we go. How about that? Love it, Austin. I love it. Keep it forever, my guy. Keep that forever. Guys, we've hit 3 o'clock. Hey, thank you all so much. Appreciate you all tuning in. We're going to get out of here. Enjoy the rest of your Wednesday, and we will talk to you all tomorrow.